Commissioner Hampton? Excuse me, Commissioner Hampton, can I approach? I've just got 3 documents I'd like to share. Got it.
Good morning. Thank you, everyone, for joining us this morning at the Zoning Ordinance Advisory Committee. It is 8:32. I'm going to call the meeting to order. We're going to start with the roll call of our members. I'm Commissioner Hampton. I'm present. Commissioner Blair, not with us. Commissioner Popkin, not with us. Ms. Bagley? Here. Good morning, Ms. Bagley. Mr. Bering?
Here.
Good morning, Mr. Bering. Mr. Hall? Present. Good morning. Mr. McGregor?
Present.
Good morning. And Mr. Reeves?
I'm here. Good morning.
Good morning. So we do have quorum, and I believe we have a few plan commissioners present. Good morning, Commissioner Stannard. Mr. Poole, do we have any other commissioners online? Doesn't appear so, but we'll recognize those for the record as we see any additional commissioners who join the meeting. I think all of you know we have a very full agenda today. We do have a number of public speakers to allow maximum time for all of our public speakers. If there are no objections, we're going to reorder our agenda to hear DCA 212-006 building height definition first, followed by DCA 212-002 short-term rentals. Are there any objections? Okay, hearing none. So for the members of the public who are joining us today, the items on our agenda are briefed by staff. We follow by questions from our members, and then we hear from the public. So just wanted, for those of you who have not been with us before, let you know what our normal procedure is. Speakers will be limited to 2 minutes so that we're able to hear from everyone who is here today who would like to be heard. You are requested to begin with your name and your address. And as a reminder for anyone appearing virtually, we will need to have your camera on to be able to receive your comments today. We do want to hear from everyone who would like to speak today. However, with the number of speakers we have, we would ask that those that may be repeating comments made by others, if you would like to reference that as a way to make sure that we're able to hear from everyone, that would be much appreciated. And I also just wanted to acknowledge we did receive a number of letters in the last few days. All of those have been circulated to all members. So just wanted to make sure that the members of the public understood that we had received all those. So thank you. So with that, Ms. May, are you presenting?
I was emailed the presentation that the planner prepared. Would you like me to get it to Jason or just?
Well, could you perhaps just read it into the record for us?
Sure, I could do that.
Thank you.
Let me find it. I'm making it up. Okay, case number DCA 212006 is consideration of amending the Dallas Development Code, sections 51A 2.102 definitions, 51A 4.408 maximum building height, and related sections to modify how building height is measured and how grade is established.
Thank you. And we had 3 additional comments that I think were from our last meeting in May. Has staff begun research on those items?
Yes, I believe that Stephen did kind of prepare a case report to outline some of those items, and some other items have been brought to me individually, and I think I'm processing those and trying to find more answers about grading activities and stuff, just to give some more information.
So members, I think we had some questions that needed to be integrated within the case report. Were there any additional questions or comments on the building height question?
Yes.
Ms. Bagley.
I have a question in regard to the definition, section 51A-2102, 45 grade. It tells that it does finished ground surface elevation does not include fill material, berms, or landscape features. Back in the past, and it kind of relates to grade, is and the finished floor elevation of the dirt skirt. So when they're trying to do underground parking, somehow that needs to be included in this as well. That's my comment.
Can you repeat that? You said the definition excludes fill material, and it needs to include fill material?
I don't know where it needs to go. What I'm concerned about is parking, that underground parking where they excavate 5 feet down and so they can get 5 feet more height. How does that work within that grade definition?
Oh, okay, that's a wonderful question. If you would refer to the case report, Stephen added some changes, and basically the idea was, so we have a definition for a basement, and that, I'm paraphrasing from memory, but a basement is something that's 50% or more below grade, and if we remember, grade is defined. And so the proposed revision, instead of just taking it from finished floor closest to and above grade, I think the proposed definition of height was changed to be the finished floor. Again, I'm doing this from memory, so it's not quite right. Finished floor of the ground story or parking garage, excluding any basements. So if there is a basement parking garage, meaning that it's 50% or more below grade, or other regular basements, then the basements would be excluded, but that's where the revised proposal is in the case report.
I'm not sure that's really addressing the partially underground parking well enough, but I'll let y'all go on with that, so I'll listen.
Well, thank you, Ms. Bagley. I think there's actually a few other comments from commissioners that have been, or members that have been emailed. And if I may request, it may be helpful if we could have engineering staff at our next meeting so that we can maybe understand how that calculation is made, how grade is considered, and how it relates to the building code definition. So if there's no other questions, I would like to recommend that we hold this matter until our July 21st hearing to allow for staff to review these items and to address the questions that have been raised by members.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. McGregor. Is there a second? Thank you, Mr. Hall. So we have a motion and a second to hold this until July the 21st with questions to be addressed as posed by the members. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. May. So, Mr. Udrea, the next item on our agenda, DCA 212002.
Thank you. Good morning. Just a second, I'm going to share my screen. Good morning, everybody. I'm going to do a short staff presentation for the short-term rental, the DCA 212002. Let me make sure that we can hear.
And Ms. Udrea, did you want to read that into the record? To
Yes,
begin, please?
absolutely.
Thank you.
Just a second. The item is consideration of amending Chapter 51 and 51A of the Dallas Development Code with consideration to be given to amending Section 51 for 2161 lodging uses and Sections 51A for 205 lodging uses to define a new use called short-term rental lodging and related regulations. This is the item I just read into the record. It is an item that was initiated and authorized by the City Plan Commission in December 2nd, 2021. This is a short or a skimmed previous progress. The topic was under discussion with City Council and City Council committees since February 2020. It undergone few task forces and task force discussions, City Council appointed task forces. And in May 4th, June 1st, June 15th, staff was called to give some briefings to City Council. On June 7th, there was a memo that was sent to the city manager that was signed by 5 council members. The presentation today rests on that memo. Just some general information. Short-term rentals are typically residential properties that are rented for overnight accommodation for a period of fewer than 30 days, consecutive days. Currently, there are no standards in the development code related to the use of a residence as a short-term rental. Again, general information, the tax code, which is Chapter 44, considers short-term rental to be lodging uses for purposes of collecting the HOT tax, the hotel occupancy tax, and that compliance requires registration with the city, with the controller's office. We also have Chapter 27 of the city code that requires all residential properties rented for 30 days or more to be registered to the city code compliance department. Short-term rentals are exempted from this registration. City Council placed a priority on the item. We held briefings, as I was saying. There were briefings with Council. Multiple departments participated. And the briefings were for potential comprehensive package for short-term regulations that are interdepartmental effort. Comprised of code compliance, the city attorney's office, city controller, and planning and urban design. Code compliance is also developing proposed standards for a short-term registration and regulation ordinance. And per the direction from City Council at the June 15th, we have the zoning option that was preferred by Council. So the zoning portion of the packet is a proposed code amendment to Chapter 51 and 51A. Is to create a new use under the short-term rental lodging uses in Section 51A for 205 lodging uses. A potential definition would be a full or partial dwelling unit that is rented to occupants for fewer than 30 consecutive days per rental period. And the zoning districts where this would be allowed, we did think a little bit about it. We are welcoming any discussion, and please do work with us on this. We were thinking to mirror the same type of districts where the lodging and boarding house is allowed, because where hotel is allowed is a little bit more convoluted, but we need to have a conversation about it. The ones that are highlighted are zoning districts. Again, let's please discuss about them. We were thinking that an off-street parking ratio for the short-term rental portion would be like a parking space for the portion of the unit that is a short-term rental. And very crucial, we are thinking that additional provision that might be included must comply with the registration ordinance, to add a limitation to only one rental unit per dwelling unit. And then to add limitations to not use the rental unit as any other use unless a valid CO is issued, in an effort to address the party houses, the event venues, and other uses that we received complaints. And we also are thinking that this use would require a certificate of occupancy, but again, this is for information purposes. The code compliance portion, which is for information purposes for this body because it's not in the zoning ordinance, would require an operator to register annually and go through annual inspections, pay a registration fee, to notify the neighbors if a short-term rental use is pursuing a registration, to provide emergency contact information to the code compliance department, to place a distance of 1,500 feet between short-term rentals and the minimum distance between short-term rentals and schools, to regulate the noise levels, allow for revocation of registration, and then to include some enforcement measures that would include a requirement for the platforms to post the short-term registration number and prohibiting the platforms to list the unregistered properties. Next steps would be for an amendment for Chapter 51 and 51A to the City Plan Commission for consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Adrea. Just a couple of questions as we begin discussion with the members. Would you confirm that there will be a code amendment website posted for this item and that both the staff report and the video from the meeting will be posted there?
Yes, so the way we organize the ZOAC meetings, there is a ZOAC webpage where the agenda, the minutes, and the videos are posted. There will also be a dedicated, we already have it up, a dedicated website page. We will put the staff report and this presentation on it. We have a contact information. We can play with that website page to add more information to it. It's already up, but we need to upload more information. Thank you for the question.
Thank you. And two other just quick clarifications. There was a memo that was issued with our agenda, and then we had a revised memo. It is the revised memo that is in front of this body for discussion. Is that correct?
The revised staff report, yes.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for that clarification on language. And as we begin our discussion, members, I just would like to remind us all that we do have a lot of speakers. So if we can just be mindful of our questions as we begin to be able to hear from the public. So questions, Mr. McGregor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Udria, were the recommendations that were produced by QLAC provided in writing to us? This goes back to 2000, I think. I'm sorry, to 2020.
I don't think so. I think basically between 2020 and 2022, the item went a lot of discussions with city council committees, and what we put in front of the body is the latest, which was based on the conversation and the briefing at council on June 15th.
Okay, so there were no written recommendations coming out of as a result of that last meeting from QLAC. Well, let me say this. If there were, could we eventually get a copy to look at those?
I think they were not. I need to think about it a little bit. What I would recommend, though, is to look in the staff report. The staff report has an appendix with the 3 presentations that were done to City Council on May 4th, June 1st, and June 15th, including the staff memo. And those include other options that were discussed or placed in front of council for discussion.
Okay, thank you. And one more, if I may. There's also a report that the city produced a couple years ago measuring, just sort of providing metrics around STRs, how many there are. Can that be included in the website for the public to see? Because I don't think it was, I found it, but it wasn't distributed to us, and I don't think it's.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. McGregor. I believe that may have been included within the briefing, and so you had to click through a couple links, but we could certainly bring it forward, so thank you. Other questions? Mr. Hall? Oh, Mr. Reeves?
Oh, I just wanted to clarify, was that report that referred to from 2020? About
I believe that's right. It was produced by the city.
Okay, I mean, there's been quite a lot of change and growth since then, so I think everybody needs to make sure that they know that that data is 2 years old, and it was probably from a slice that was older than that. So that's all.
Did you have any other questions, Mr. Reeve?
No, ma'am, that's it. Just a clarification of that 2020 older data.
Thank you. And I would like to acknowledge Commissioner Kingston's with us now. Thank you, Commissioner Kingston, for joining us. Mr. Hall, questions?
Yeah, Ms. Udrea, on one of your slides, you showed the districts that STRs would be allowed in. That did not include single family, did it? Okay.
That is correct.
Okay. And there's already thousands of these things in the city. How would the new ordinance impact existing STRs that we know about and we don't know about? Is there a grandfather clause?
We're gonna have to discuss that further with code compliance. I would say that they will no longer be allowed. I mean, and then we'll include some provisions to see how they can be phased out.
I could see enforcement is going to be, you know, an issue. It would take quite an effort to do that. Okay, thank you.
Ms. Udrea, would that be something appropriate for the city attorney to give us information on? And if it needs to come back to us, that's fine. But
Good morning, Casey Burgess with the City Attorney's Office. So it looks like the proposal that you have before you today, or at least a staff recommendation, does not allow short-term rentals in residential districts. So if that was what was ultimately adopted by City Council, any short-term rentals in a residential district would be illegal at that point.
thank you, Mr. Burgess.
A point of clarification?
Yes.
I think I heard him say not allowed in residential districts. He meant single family and duplex. Is that correct?
That is a good clarification. Thank you, Mr. McGregor. Other questions? Commissioner Blair? Ms. Bagley or Mr. Bering? I'm trying to track everybody
Yes.
online as well. Mr. Bering, yes.
Good question. This is a lot of information, and especially if you haven't kept up day by day over the last 2 years, is there some kind of side-by-side comparison we could see of recommendations from, say, the task force versus recommendations from council, anything from the committee level? Just, I think seeing that side by side would be helpful.
Not at this point, but we can provide it, and we will include on the website links to all of the quality of life community meetings, everything that is posted on the city's website. So if the body desires, so we can do a side-by-side comparison or history of how we got here.
Okay.
Yes, Mr. Reeves.
Yes, just probably for Mr. Burgess, a question about the committee. My understanding, or make sure I have my understanding right. My understanding is the committee was appointed by council to make a recommendation, just like ZOAC makes a recommendation to CPC, then CPC makes a recommendation to council. Council decides. This was a quality of life committee that was appointed by council. They made a recommendation to council. Council it's evolved over the last couple of years, and now they've made the decision to put this in our docket today. So what happened 2 years ago with that recommendation is kind of old and has been kind of supplemented by City Council's direction today. Is that a true statement?
That's correct. Yeah, the recommendation from the committee was not binding on City Council. It's not binding on you guys.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. McGregor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Hooter, I wanted to ask you for clarification on a point in your presentation where one of the parameters is to limit STRs to 1 unit per dwelling. Can you expand on that? If it, as somebody pointed out to me, if if somebody is renting rooms from their house and there are 2 bedrooms or 3 bedrooms, how does that rule apply to their circumstance?
That would not be allowed. That is already covered by code under lodging and boarding house, rental by room. So we already have a use for that, so that would not be allowed.
Commissioner Blair.
I have a couple of questions. For legal, the first one is if you previously stated that the recommendation that has been brought to us by City Council was just a recommendation and not binding. Are you saying that ZOAC should be looking at the recommendation and moving forward with our own recommendation that would go to CPC and then back to City Council for it to become an ordinance?
That's correct.
Oh, thank you. Then question for Ms. Andrea. That was an easy question for you. You're saying that in response to the question Mr. McGregor had, and I have a hard time saying Mr. McGregor, not Commissioner. Are you saying that with STRs, however we determine we should move forward or not move forward with them, that anyone who is renting out a room, would that mean that if it's longer than 30 days, would that still be not allowed in part of an STR, or is that under a different amendment or a different section of 51A?
So the definition that, the draft definition that we have in front of us is rental for fewer than 30 days. If it's longer than 30 days, then it falls under Chapter 27. That's my understanding, but I would like code to correct me if I'm wrong. So the long-term rental is a different thing.
Thank you. I just wanted to net out that we were talking about two different things, and so that for clarification purposes, setting the ground floor at the ground floor, that we understand that that this has a timeline of 30 days or less opposed to 30 days or more.
That is correct.
So I'm going to ask a couple of quick questions, if I may. I know there's been discussion about maximum numbers of guests, spacing requirements, other items. Are those items that are going to be captured within Chapter 27, or would those be appropriate for this body to consider?
I don't think I wouldn't call it Chapter 27 because I don't know the registration regulation ordinance with code compliance if it's going to be Chapter 27 or something else. But I think the discussion was that part of the regulation would be captured under the registration regulation ordinance with code compliance.
Thank you, and I will use registration in the future. So similar to that, I think there's been discussion about, or looking at other cities' examples, there's noise abatement, security, operation plans. Again, are those intended to be covered within the registration requirements?
I believe so, but let me add code to come here and confirm with me.
Okay, and I'm glad to defer as well.
Good morning, Commission. Jeremy Reid, Interim Assistant Director for Code Compliance. So the answer to the question is yes. Those items are intended to be captured under the registration portion. I think the way that it's kind of formulated in the proposal is the zoning portion before you today is most of the where question, and covered under the registration is going to be most of the how question. The specifics of how the short-term rental, if it's allowed, where it's allowed, how they will be required to operate. The notification of neighbors, how far between the noises, and things like that.
Thank you, Mr. Reid. And I'm not sure if this will be for you or back to Ms. Udrea, but in the proposal that's before us, the districts are proposed to allow an STR in multifamily. Is that consistent with the purpose statement of multifamily districts?
That's a good question. Let me check it. As I'm saying, that I would like for us to thoroughly discuss and vet those districts. Our intent was to look at where the lodging and boarding house, because that's a little bit more consistent, and the hotel has some nuances, but it's up for discussion. Let me read the purpose statement for the multifamily districts. Now, each multifamily district has its own. Let me go to MF2 because I think that's the first one. The MF2 districts are composed mainly of areas containing a mixture of single-family, duplex, multifamily, and certain dwellings and certain uniformly developed multifamily dwelling sections. These districts are medium-density districts, are located in certain areas close into the center of the city and at various outlying locations. The area regulations are designed to protect the residential character and to prevent the overcrowding of the land by providing minimum standards for building, spacing, yards, off-street parking, and coverage. All commercial and office uses are prohibited. It is anticipated that additional areas may be designated in MF and MF2A district from time to time in the future where the change is appropriate and access and utility services can reasonably accommodate these medium density dwellings. Additionally, MF2 districts is created to encourage a provision of affordable housing. Each, I would say, we put in to mirror again where the lodging and boarding, we put MF2, MF3, and MF4. Each of those has a different purpose statement and it varies by density, but I believe the intent of it is the same.
Thank you, Mr. Drea. And I think Mr. Burgess is going to get a little bit of a workout. My last question. I think we've received some, in our letters, questions about other cities who may have defined short-term rentals as a lodging use. Could you just give us an outline of how that's been handled by other municipalities?
You know, I'm not sure if any other cities have done that. Really where a lot of other cities have run into problems is they basically defined them as residential uses and then tried to put restrictions on them separate from, say, single family or multifamily. And that's the problem that they've hit is the courts have looked at it and they said, well, you know, hey, this is residential use. Really, what's the difference under your code? So, yeah, that's why we're kind of thinking about this one a little bit differently. And, yeah, maybe it's something else.
Is it fairly consistent, though, that they refer to lodging within their definitions?
Yeah, I would imagine most cities have a lodging, category under their code like ours does. So, yeah, we have a group of lodging uses that are hotel, motel, extended stay hotel, motel, and overnight general purpose shelter. There may be a couple of other ones, but, yeah, most cities would have that type of category.
Thank you. So I think we've heard from everyone. Second round before we move to our speakers. Commissioner Kingston. We can't hear you.
There you go. Yeah, I had a couple of questions. And following up on something that Mr. Reeves said, I believe that there's some material circulated from someone named Murray Cox that shows what the uses are and what the more present data is. Has staff reviewed that, and can that be circulated to ZOAC?
Yes, we did review it. We did have a meeting with him. I think it's a public website that he has with the data, and again, we can add it on our website as well.
Thank you. I think that might be helpful. I think that's a little more contemporary data. Has there been any discussion about the ability for people who have affordable units pursuant to our mixed income housing program, or maybe the county's program, being either specifically allowed or disallowed to use those units as short-term rental?
I do not know. I will have to circle. That's managed by housing department. So I will have to circle back with an answer on that.
Okay, thank you. And then what's the basis for not requiring SUPs in the districts where we currently would require an SUP for lodging use? What's the rationale there?
I would say it's up for discussion.
But this is a staff recommendation, right?
It's a potential in the report, trying to make it as straightforward as possible, because we were thinking that they would be subject to a registration ordinance, and they will have all the operational standards in the registration ordinance. And in the potential registration ordinance, what staff presented to council was an annual registration, and that also, as I was briefing, will contain provisions to rescind or terminate the use if it becomes a nuisance. So we were thinking that the operational standards that you would normally put in an SUP are covered by the registration ordinance. But again, it's up for discussion.
And then last question, this body can regulate things like outdoor amplified sound and lighting and things like that that might be deemed disruptive to other non-STR users in a district. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the whole statement.
Sure.
I apologize.
No, that's okay. This body can include regulations for things like no outdoor amplified sound or lighting regulations as part of this if they desire to, right?
I think so. If we can make a land use rationale for it, I think so. I need to consult with the attorney, so I'll put a pin on that, but I think so.
Yeah, no, I mean, if you can just think through these and maybe be prepared to address them at the next one, that's all I'm asking. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Kingston. So second round before we move to speakers. Oh, Commissioner Sandring.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I have a question that goes to, I guess it's more of a legal question, which is if you're allowing STRs by right in multifamily districts, okay, doesn't that right go to the owner of the building, the manager of the building, and not to the tenants of the building? And I want to make sure that's clarified, because under property code, for instance, you don't have the right to sublet unless it's allowed in your leasing contract or you get direct permission from the owner of the building. So if you say it's allowed by right, shouldn't it be clarified that it's not the tenant's right, it's the owner and manager of the building's rights, whether they allow it?
Yeah, so with all zoning goes with the land. So yeah, anything, like that between the owner and tenant that can be dictated by their lease. That's not really something that we ever get into in zoning, whether that land use right goes to the owner or the tenant. Just the right, that's with the land. It carries forward with that.
Well, I certainly understand that, but, what we don't want to end up happening, from a practical standpoint is if we say it's by right and we get a bunch of people screaming to the city, well, you said I had this by right, and really they don't have the right to sublet unless it's in their lease. And I just hope that is clarified, in whatever document that we come up with.
I'll defer, I don't know, somebody from building inspection, maybe Sarah, but yeah, wouldn't it be required to get a CO that you have authorization from the property owner to do that?
Hi, Sarah May from Building Inspection. Yes, so if it requires a certificate of occupancy, there's a whole like 50 other chapters of our code that they do have to comply with. And if it becomes if it violates any other laws or rules or regulations with the city, or, if it's, even if they change owners or operators of the use, they have to get a new CO. So there is a lot of factors that go into if someone can operate a use in the city of Dallas. It's saying by right just means that it doesn't have to go through a public hearing to be an allowed use of the zoning district. They still have to comply with every other rule and regulation. Obviously, like you said, there's property rights, with landowners and tenants, and, all those things would still apply regardless if it says by right or not.
Okay, just a couple of other questions sort of to the same thing in a way. So allowed by right, once again, let's go to HOAs, because many times groups of townhouses, planned developments, condo complexes have HOAs. And I just want to make sure that whatever regulations we come up with, not just regulations, but zoning ordinances, clarify that if an HOA says no STRs in our building, that comes first over the right to have STRs.
Yeah, so those are actually two separate things. So yeah, if you had an HOA that prohibited short-term rentals, they would be able to enforce that under their declarations. The city wouldn't get involved in that, but yeah, the HOA would definitely be able to prohibit that STR.
Okay, thank you. I'll save my other questions. Thank you.
And I think we have one follow-up from Mr. Hall.
I'll just add to that. In our condominium, our HOA prohibits short-term rentals. That apparently passed legal muster. And so I guess that at least in condominiums, HOAs have the right to do that. That did bring up the question, would a single-family residential HOA have the right to do that? And I don't know, but I wonder that. And can I follow up with sort of a technical question? If suddenly all of these STRs become illegal, is there a mechanism for taking those listings off of platforms like Airbnb and VRBO?
I think, as I was saying in the presentation, on the registration portion, code compliance and other departments are contemplating an enforcement mechanism to regulate the platforms and to ask them and to require them to only list properties that have a registration number. So I think it can be addressed, but again, I would direct it to the attorney more.
Does the City of Dallas have that kind of power that they can go to Airbnb and say, take these off? I'm just curious.
Yeah, so I believe that will be part of the registration ordinance. So a lot of cities around the country have had luck doing that. They have required the properties to register, then they've also required the platforms to come in and do some registration as well. And they regulated the platforms as booking agents and payment processors. And the cities have said, okay, well, you can't, if you have one that's not a registered STR with the city, that you can't process a payment and you can't collect a fee for that listing. And the courts have upheld that. So if they're not going to make money off of the listing, the platforms are more than likely going to take those down.
Thank you. Okay.
So, Mr. Reeves, I'm going to ask if we can have final questions so that in about 9:20 we move to our speakers. Do you want to hold your question or just have something for staff to bring back to us?
Well, I don't know. Let me answer that question. It might be. So my question is, I talked to a gentleman last night that lives in probably a 10-story building, and he said, multifamily, and he said that one whole floor is dedicated to STRs. And my question for staff or legal is, at what point does a multifamily that's dedicating whole floors to STRs become a hotel use, lodging use in a residential district? Because his statement was, and I'm not going to name names or anything like that because I'm trying to get more research, is that the owners of the multifamily are actually taking a 20% fee for that, for the people that have rented that floor to do that. So back to my question is, at what point is that multifamily now a hotel?
I would start and then probably I would give it to code. I would just read the definition for hotel or motel. It's a facility containing six or more guest rooms that are rented to occupants on daily basis. And then I would also make a comment that in the registration ordinance, there was one of the versions, and I think I didn't add it in the PowerPoint, that we were thinking or we were discussing to add a maximum percentage of units in a multifamily to be allowed to be short-term rentals. And I think we were proposing in one of our memos or presentations for council was 10%. And I think some of the council members told staff that 10% is too high of a percentage. So I think we were thinking to address it in the registration ordinance, and if code compliance has anything to add.
So question for Mr. Burgess is this situation, that 10% or 5% of the number of units, is that something that can be determined here in zoning?
Could you clarify that, please?
I mean, because what staff just said right there was like that it had been mentioned that only 10% of a multifamily could be short-term rentals, and that they were going to do that with the other chapter, not the zoning chapter. And my question is the 10% or 5% or 2%, whatever, would that be under the purview of ZOAC as well?
If I may add to that, wouldn't that be similar to for instance, mixed-use project that has a percentage of land use that is either required or stated?
Yeah, I think there's a way that we can figure out to put that in ordinance. I think it could probably fit under either one. Probably just which one's the better fit.
Thank you, Mr. Reeves.
Okay, thank you.
I think Mr. McGregor is going to do our final question. We'll move to speakers.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll be brief. And this is really a little bit of a background question, Ms. Udra. I understand that as this has gone through a process of 2 or 3 years of discussions, some of those discussions have resulted in the city agreeing or thinking about having some sort of agreement, I don't know, the level of formality with the VRBOs and Airbnbs related to collecting bookings information for purposes of tax payment, and also related to identifying bad operators and pull them out. The question is not about that discussion, but whether there will be language in the code that would refer to that, and that's it.
Yes, per the presentation under additional provisions, we said that all of them must comply with the registration ordinance. So all of these operational, they will have to be applied, so they're required.
Thank you, Madam Chair, appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. McGregor. I think there was one question also about a comment that was made regarding platforms. If I could ask, could we have that? I do want to move to our speakers because I do recognize we have many folks who are here in attendance. Can staff include that in follow-up information to us on how that is proposed to be addressed and how that will relate to our zoning provisions? I think it's following up on Mr. McGregor's comment about the additional provisions that are proposed within the zoning.
I still have a question. Quick.
Okay, we're 1 minute over, so we can be very brief, Commissioner Standard.
I'll be very brief. My question is this. I don't know, right now, there are approximately, I understand, about 6,000 STRs, and only about 300 are, quote, registered. How do you propose that you get people to register? I haven't heard anything about that. I mean, how can you prevent someone from just having an STR and they're not registered? What is the code's proposal to get STR registered when right now we have thousands that aren't?
Thank you, Commissioner, for the question. So the ordinance needs to be cohesive, and one of the requirements that we're putting into the ordinance or that's on the proposal is, like was mentioned before, for the registration number with the City of Dallas to be required to be listed on the posting. So at that point, any listing that we find in the City of Dallas that does not have that registration number would de facto be in violation, and we could then start the process of enforcement. So it's definitely a stick approach, right? Requiring that they post it and therefore prove up front that they are registered. At that point, if we find any, when we find any, we can start that notification and enforcement process as needed to encourage and compel them to register.
Thank you, Mr. Reid. Thank you, Commissioner Standard. Okay, with that, I'm going to move to our speakers, and then we'll come back for a recommendation from the members. So, Mr. Poole, we're going to start with number 1, and for those here, we just have our list of speakers as they're registered, so we're going to take them in the order that we have them. So we're going to begin with Lisa Sievers. And you'll have 2 minutes if you'll please begin with your name and address.
Can you hear me? Okay, thank you. I'm Lisa Sievers. I live at 8238 Barbary. My husband and I own and operate 2 short-term rentals in East Dallas. I've worked with the City of Dallas on the last 3 short-term rental task forces. We are Superhost with over 800 5-star reviews. We are current on our hot taxes. We meet our guests personally and oversee our properties with commitment and respect for our neighbors and neighborhood. We do not allow parties, and there are hundreds, if not thousands, of us operating a respectful, neighborhood-friendly short-term rental. Let's take a minute for some facts. These are some facts from a Dallas City staff report of 5/3/21, which was just a year ago. This report clearly states that over 90% of STRs have 0 311 or 911 calls associated with their address. Additionally, nuisance STRs are outliers, and that STRs currently have limited measurable impact on neighboring communities and no evidence of a citywide impact. The report also states that less than 0.5% of the city's total residences are STRs. That says to me that this is not a crisis of epic proportions, nor are STRs creating a housing shortage. This says to me that this is a nuisance issue that can be handled with some fair and sensible solutions, many of which have been presented in the proposed ordinance and registration, which is before the City Council right now. Why do we want to zone STRs out of existence when over 90% of them are good operators? Let's move forward with an ordinance with teeth to root out the few bad operators and allow the rest of us to continue to operate. There is absolutely no need to zone us out of existence when no enforcement mechanism has been in place to correct the very few nuisance STRs. I, along with other good short-term rental operators like us, hope you will refuse to run us out of existence and instead refer a fair and sensible ordinance that works for everyone back to City Council. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sievers. Greg Estelle. If I may ask everyone to please, we would ask not to have applause or other displays from our members.
Good morning. Greg Estelle, 411 Bondstone Drive. Dallas has a housing shortage, not a lodging shortage. If you are an affordable housing advocate, You can't ignore the following. The Economic Policy Institute, a public policy think tank based in Washington, D.C., has previously stated, 1, the economic cost Airbnb poses outweighs the benefits. 2, rising housing costs are a problem for American families, and evidence suggests that the presence of Airbnb raises housing costs. That was 3 years ago. And the lack of affordable housing in Dallas has accelerated since that publication. Today, Dallas has a 20,000 unit housing deficit, and it's growing. Inside Airbnb has determined that STRs have grown over 568% since 2016, while home ownership in Dallas has declined. Yet there are over 4,500 whole home STR listings on Airbnb alone. STRs in Dallas are not moms and pops renting a bedroom. 85% of Dallas STRs are entire home listings. 68% of Dallas hosts have more than one home listing. 48% are hosts with a portfolio of over 5 or more properties. And lastly, 53% of entire home STRs are hosted by entities that don't even call Dallas home. Please support the Council's consensus, keep it simple solution. Dallas needs more homes, not hotels, in our neighborhoods. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Estelle. Tom Forsyth.
Good morning, Madam Chair and committee members. My name is Tom Forsyth. I'm a resident at 2115 Siesta Drive in District 4. SDR owners will tell you that they have an absolute right to operate, but they do not. Multiple cities in Texas have banned them, and courts have upheld these bans. SDR owners will tell you that they are responsible, but they are operating like hotels, engaging in lodging activity in residential zones of the city, clearly in violation of our current zoning laws. They are supposed to pay the hot tax, but fully 80% of the estimated 6,000 SDRs in Dallas are not paying the tax. Now, how is that responsible? There have been 1,157 311-911 complaints against SDRs that have been filed by Dallas residents from January 2020 to February 2022. This is a statistic from the city's data analytics department. And the city staff admits that this is low because they can't accurately track which calls that come in relate to all the SDRs. So we know that the instances of egregious behavior by SDR owners and their guests are just profound, and they're everywhere in the city and every district, and you'll hear many of these stories in the testimony of the citizens today. They say that the problem is the bad actors, but the problem is inherent in the business model. 85% of Airbnb units are entire housing units, homes or apartments. 4,500 is the number of entire homes that are taken up in Dallas by SDRs. And the problem with the business model is that the renters do not vet their guests, they do not monitor the activities of the guests, and neighbors are left holding the bag of enforcement. Thank you.
Thank you. Cindy Hellstern.
Good morning. Good morning. I'm Cindy Hellstern, 10827 Crooked Creek Drive, Dallas, Texas. I'm a lifetime citizen of Dallas. I've lived within 2 miles of my home all my life. I'm a 31-year officer and board member of the Royal North Haven Homeowners Association. We, together with 2 other homeowner associations, have over 600 homes we represent. We have a significant problem with STRs. Legal action is in the works. People do not want this to happen. Dallas doesn't need it to happen. Last March, I was the victim of a felony theft assault in the street in front of my home because I happened to take a photo of a party bus driver. The police couldn't come because it wasn't a high enough priority call when I called the first time. They could only come after I was assaulted. They were very compassionate. They took a great report, but within 48 hours of the report, my case was closed. No detective showed. I learned a lot from that experience. 4 things. I'm no longer safe to go outside of my home when an STR has guests. STRs have a business plan that are designed to financially exploit single-family and multifamily residentially zoned properties. All 13 city council member districts have many, many homeowners with serious quality of life problems that they have not been able to resolve with 311 and 911. That the 311 and 911 city services.
Ms. Hellstern, that's your time. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you.
Darrell Baker. Thank you. Our next speaker is going to be Cookie Peden. Mr. Baker. Mr. Baker, we cannot hear you or see you.
Okay, I've unmuted.
Okay, we can hear you, but we can't see you.
Okay, I've started the video.
And we're still not able to see you.
Okay. My camera's on.
There you are. We can see you now.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm Darrell Baker. I live at 6306 Elder Grove Drive here in Dallas. I want to say that the current proposal has no safeguards for residential areas. It has no staffing, and there's no proof that we will cover the cost of registration and administration because we can't even prove that we're going to be able to collect the hot tax at a level that will cover the cost. It seems to be a really bad idea to approve something that's proven to be problematic. The current proposals include allowing STRs in some residential districts. An expectation as homeowners when we buy into our homes is that we're going to live in a neighborhood of neighbors, not investors, and not speculators, and not corporations who buy up houses strictly to rent them. The city also has not been a good player in this because when we make calls about this, especially in our area, I live in Oak Cliff, there's no response. If you call the police, they don't have anything to hang their head on. And this idea just isn't one that's been vetted properly. And I urge you to not support having these short-term rentals in residential neighborhoods. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Baker. Ms. Peden. And our next speaker will then be Vera Elkins.
Is this on? Yeah. Okay. My name is Cookie Peden. I reside at 7111 Debbie Drive in North Dallas. That's District 12. Land use and zoning exist for a reason. They group like functions together and they separate conflicting uses. City doesn't allow industrial sites or alcohol sales next door to a school. Likewise, it doesn't allow industrial uses in residential neighborhoods. Those are for reasons. We've all seen what happens when that process breaks down. We don't need more shingle mountains occurring because we've not done our duty and filled out the proper zoning and proper regulations. Areas zoned residential are where Dallas families live. STRs, like hotels, cater to visitors, not residents. excuse me, current code already exists where lodging uses should be allowed: entertainment districts, commercial areas, and tourist zoned areas, tourist attractions. The state even defines an SDR as a lodging use and collects hotel occupancy taxes for that use. Wouldn't it be much simpler to come up with a simple solution and merely align our code with that which the state's already defined? Define a lodging use and restrict STRs to areas that are restricted to lodging uses. STRs are for profit businesses. Neighborhoods should be for families and homeowners. They shouldn't have hotels next door to families that are filled with strangers who've never been vetted. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Peden, and would like to also acknowledge former Commissioner Cookie Peden. Thank you for your service. Ms. Vera Elkins.
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am, we can hear you, but we can't see you.
Okay, let me see if I can change that. I just was able to get on. I was having problems with technical difficulty.
Nope, you got it. We can hear you and see you. If you'd please start with your name and address.
My name is Vera Elkins, and I live at 4840 Worth Street. I'm a neighbor. I'm a resident of Dallas. I live in a neighborhood, but I also am a responsible host. I think zoning STRs and would ban us. I don't think that that is the solution. The City of Dallas is responsible host. Numerous times, I feel like this has been kicked to zoning because it did not do a good job at enforce it, like coming up with a plan to do sensible regulations that we have presented. We've done our due diligence to work with the city. I do not think this is a solution. Taxpayer, I don't think this is a solution either. We do pay hot tax. We are responsible host, and to be quite frank, I feel like this has become an issue, a political issue, and not really in the best interest of property owners. I have rights as well, just as well as everyone else on here. It's a property right issue, in my opinion. That being said, if it does go to zoning and we go this route, I will say that this will set some hefty legal lawsuits. That's all I have to say. I did not have very much time to be on here because the city put a public announcement out with incorrect information, and I was not able to call in on my phone. The access code was wrong. So I do appreciate you hearing me out. Thanks.
Thank you for being with us, Ms. Elkins. Brittany White, followed by Danny Augustus. Is Brittany White online?
He is not in the attendee list.
So is that not online?
Not online.
Thank you. Danny Augustus?
Not online.
That's followed by Larissa Clark and then Azar Tafiq.
Larissa Clark is not online.
Okay, and I believe, and I apologize if I've not pronounced your name correctly, is with us in person. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Dr. Azar Tafiq. I'm a resident of 13750 Rolling Hills Lane, Dallas. I have been hosting since 2015. I came to this country as an immigrant, and I paid my graduate school, my PhD fees by hosting, and in my house, other hosts as well. I have over 900 reviews, and most of the hosts who have stayed with me, I don't have any complaints. In Dallas, however, My input is that putting an issue of zoning onto a management issue or technology issue will not solve it, because eventually there should be a rollout of who are the bad actors. If some STR hosts are not running things properly, that should be identified rather than putting a zoning issue. Personally, I have been on the receiving end from my neighbors. In a way, I have never received any noise issues or anything. I have all the devices equipped in my units in the house where I live and share the other rooms. However, on May 5th, most of my 65% of my guests stay more than 30 days, so they don't even fall under short-term rentals. But in May 5th, my neighbors came to my house, tried to trespass it, stole my mail, and then called electric company and got the electricity turned off. And City of Dallas Ordinance has been putting those tickets off short term, even though that's not a violation, yellow tickets or violations in front of my house. I received one yesterday. I received one on May 18th as well. So I would like to plead that City of Dallas should communicate with the other departments as well what short-term rental is, and people are staying more than 30 days, what do they need to do rather than penalizing responsible hosts like me. My hot taxes are on track, my property taxes are on track. So for responsible citizens who do not have any prior complaints, putting zoning will always impact responsible hosts like me and others. Thank you.
Thank you for being here. And I do think we may have code compliance if you wanted to speak with them. Next it's Brody's Bungalow. Mr. Brody?
Not online.
Abraham Cohen, followed by Catherine Pate. Abraham Cohen, not present.
Not online.
Okay.
Catherine Pate is not online.
Is Catherine Pate present? Okay. Brian Halter, followed by Kayla Powell. Okay. Brian Halter or Kayla Powell? Okay, not online, not present.
Online.
Was that not online, Mr. King?
Kayla Powell is online.
Thank you. And that will be followed by Nadia Ataya. Ms. Powell, can you hear us?
Hi, I'm having troubles starting my video.
And now that you're a attendee, you should be able to have your camera. So,
Yeah.
Ms. Powell, we will come back to you to see if we're able to get that technical issue resolved.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Is Nadia Ataya?
Not online.
Nadia Ataya, not present. Calvin Poe? And that will be followed by Will Wakefield.
Is it working? Okay, perfect. Hey, how are you all? My name is Calvin Pugh, and I live at 3301 Hudnall Street. And I think there needs to be a conversation around the new workforce that's arising. Individuals like myself travel to different cities to work for a considerable amount of time. And I think that if I want to stay in the city for, say, 2 weeks or 2 months, I should be able to do that in a nice, comfortable place rather than in a hotel, someplace that's going to charge me, say, $5,000 just to stay for 1 month when the average cost of a short-term rental could be considerably less. And I think there needs to be a conversation around the new workforce that's arising, because in general, I'm going to be working in anywhere from 3 or 4 cities within a year. And it's like, where is the thought around the person like myself? So, and then also there was a mention about if there's a housing issue. If there's a housing issue, build more houses. That's kind of my thought process around it. And then also bad hosts. bad hosts or bad hosts, individuals who are having proper surveillance, proper security, proper things like that, deserve to have a fair chance in the short-term rental market. So thank you.
Thank you for being with us. Will Wakefield, followed by, and I will apologize, Mr. Harari.
They are not online.
Mr. King, was that online? They are online?
They are not online.
Not online and not present. Fernando Batista. Thank you, and that'll be followed by Robin Coravar. Good morning.
Good morning. Name is Fernando Batista, 2836 South Glenbrook Drive. There's several issues out here on, most of the stuff that I'm hearing here is issues that they need to be enforced. There's a lot of good, Airbnb hosts out there, and I think we're being punished by several that are not out there. I think it's something good for the city to have alternative housing. We were up and going. Even when the crisis happened of COVID, we were the only ones out there operating the best that we can. We are a super host, several properties, and we do employ a bunch of good, hardworking people that we've had. To be punished for something like this, I don't think that it would be fair, and it wouldn't be fair for any of the other workers that we have. Thank you very much.
Thank you for being with us. Robin Corvar. Mr. King, are they online?
Not online.
Okay. Norma Minnis, followed by Brad McClelland.
Norma Minnis, 6219 Prospect Avenue, District 14. I was born in Dallas. I've lived here on the east side my entire life. My family's been in Dallas for over 100 years. If you don't know where you've been, you can't know where you're going. In World War II, Dallas's inner city homeowners rented rooms to out-of-towners at the Ford Motor Plant on East Grand where tanks were being built instead of cars. These boarding houses were the forerunners of the short-term rentals of today. They are also an example of what not to do. For 30 years after the war, the boarding houses were allowed to operate in our inner city single-family zoned neighborhoods, just like the STRs of today. My great-grandmother had a boarding house on McKinney Avenue. They were so prevalent that when the city council upzoned much of the inner city in the mid-60s, single-family Munger Place was upzoned to MF2. Why would a city council upzone a historic neighborhood full of original craftsman-style homes to multifamily zoning? The answer is they were responding to the use. The higher commercial use had prevailed. By the mid-70s, urban pioneers moving into the inner city quickly learned that use and zoning must be the same for neighborhood stability. When use and zoning are not consistent, neighborhoods deteriorate. My mother, who only lived in Lockwood, told me she didn't think she could come visit me when I bought my first house in East Dallas because East Dallas was a slum. By 1978, the Grand Homes had even been invited into fourplexes. The longtime next-door homeowning neighbors had moved. No one wanted to live next door to a hotel. Our inner city neighborhoods went into major decline. In February of 1978, the pressure from the urban pioneers, or as D Magazine called us, urban guerrillas, the Dallas City Council downzoned Munger Place from MF2 back to single family with historic designation. How do I know this? I've actually lived it. I have seen the Renaissance. When the zoning and the use are compatible, it's a renaissance. And the question is, why hasn't the city staff told you this history? How does the city staff think a neighborhood will survive having commercial businesses next door? I'm asking you to return, to help us keep our single-family neighborhoods and our residential neighborhoods residential. It's taken 40 years to have the kind of neighborhoods we have in these districts today. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Minnis. Brad McClelland, followed by Judy Buckner. Mr. King?
Mr. McClelland is not online, and Ms. Buckner, I can unmute, but I don't think her camera is working. So let me unmute her real quick.
So was Ms. Powell able to get her camera operational?
It does not look like it.
Okay. So Ms. Buckner, if you're able to hear us, we'll circle back to you as well to see if you're able to get your camera operational. Our next speakers are Dave Schwarte. I recognize that Commissioner Kingston made it onto our speakers list. She has declined to speak. That, I believe, was added in error. Speaker 28 is simply listed as Kelly. So Dave Schwarte.
Yes, I'm on.
Thank you, Mr. Schwarte. And you're able to turn your camera on.
I never had a problem with this before. Just a second.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Schwarte. If you'd start with your name and address.
Thank you. My name is Dave Schwarte. I live at 2700 Laurel Valley Lane in Arlington, Texas. I'm appearing on behalf of the Texas Neighborhood Coalition. Before I retired, I served for over 40 years as in-house counsel for two major North Texas corporations. My bottom line is that housing revolving door of transients, short-term rentals are destructive of the fundamental character of stable, single-family residential neighborhoods. Short-term rentals offer temporary accommodations for remuneration, and they are the functional equivalent of hotels and boarding houses. They are thus lodging uses and should be classified as such. Now, we've already heard the expected threats of legal action. We work with cities across the state, and I must tell you that is always the card that is played. As you will know, under Texas law, if the city adopts a zoning ordinance, it's presumed to be valid, and the burden of showing that it should not be allowed to go forward is a heavy one on the person who's trying to invalidate the ordinance. In the case with Dallas, you've had a multitude of citizens who've been complaining for years about the absolute misery that they've experienced when they invade residential neighborhoods. You've heard a lot of it here today. In short, any such zoning ordinance should be upheld. I would like to point you to the experience we've had here in Arlington. In Arlington, 3 years ago, short-term rental regulations banned short-term rentals in all residential neighborhoods in the city except for one. And those ordinances have been upheld. They have withstood judicial challenge for the last 3 years. And most recently, in January of this year, the Texas Supreme Court refused to hear a challenge to our ordinance. So I would say, please move forward and adopt the zoning solution that's been suggested to you by council. It is the only way to functionally protect single-family neighborhoods. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is listed as Kelly. I'll defer to Mr. King if they are online.
Hello, my name is Kelly Nelson. I'm a owner and resident of 3526 Ivandale Avenue in Oak Cliff. I also own an STR located across the street from my house. I am a responsible owner. I meet every single guest that arrives at my house. I am closely monitoring the activities that occur at my STR, as well as any noise volumes that are happening at the STR. To this day, I have never had one complaint from any of my neighbors or the city with regards to noise levels or residents staying at the short-term rental. In fact, I believe that my property is one of the most well-maintained on the street, where I have neighbors that are not operating STRs, and they have loud parties, guests coming and going, lots of traffic on the street because of their houses falling down, etc. So I don't think STRs are the ones that are causing the noise and complaints within the neighborhood. In addition, I employ several local Oak Cliff residents to help with the cleaning and maintenance of my STR. They have all indicated how this has greatly changed their lives and provided them the opportunity for additional income for their families. So to reiterate, I do not think that STRs are the main problem of the residential neighborhoods. Like I mentioned, in fact, we have many residents that are not being upholding to residential, requirements or being responsible homeowners as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Nelson. Robert Montagna, followed by Teresa Mugica, and I apologize if I did not pronounce that correctly. Robert Montana?
I don't see either of them online.
Okay, not online, not present. Jay Crutcher, followed by Carolyn Parrott. Not present. Are they online?
Mr. Crutcher is now online as a panelist.
Mr. Crutcher, can you hear us? All right, we can see you, we can't hear you.
There you go. Is that it?
Thank you.
Hi, Jay Kutcher, 6257 Palo Pinto. Honestly, I really don't have a dog in this fight other than I'm a citizen and I care about private property rights. The last time we had a meeting like this, I spoke in support of STRs. Immediately after speaking, I received a threatening email from someone named Sharon Sadaka. I have no idea who this is or how they got my personal email due to me simply voicing an opinion. At the end of the day, we are all neighbors. I'll still go have a beer with people who don't agree with my opinion. As this process has gone on, I've noticed that the people who disagree with me are simply mean and malicious people. Just listen to the arguments today. One side seems to be reasonable people willing to work with the other side. The other side constantly throws out insults and tries to dehumanize small businesses trying to make a living. This has furthered my belief that I am on the right side of this issue. I do support STRs. I don't want to be associated with the spiteful behavior of the people who do not support STRs. While I will still have a beer with most anyone that disagrees with me, I will not have a beer with Sharon Sadaka. I repeat, Sharon Sadaka. And I encourage the other side to disassociate with this woman and all the behavior this woman represents. Thanks.
Carolyn Parrott, followed by Shelley Mondragon. Not
Neither
present.
of those are online.
Okay, not present. Nikki Davis, followed by
Madam Chair, this is Mark Rees. I have a quick comment, if you don't mind.
while we try to get folks online.
Yes. I don't think it's appropriate that any speaker call out other people's names out of the public on either side, and I would ask for that not to occur respectfully. Thank you.
I appreciate the comment.
She sent me a threatening email.
Excuse me, Mr. Crutcher, your time has passed to speak.
Thanks.
Nikki Davis or Sharaka Darmongante.
Neither of those are online.
And I believe we have one speaker in attendance. Our next two speakers will be Nicole Mcclelland and Nancy Rodriguez. So Nikki Davis not present, and I apologize if I did not pronounce your name correctly. Thank you. Yeah, you may need to hit the button. We can't hear you very well.
Hi, my name is Charka Dharmagunaratna. I live at 4530 Victor Street in Peaks Edition. I felt that some of the task force meetings have been very productive. I read some of the language inside of the proposed document that was circulated. I felt that it was kind of shackling and moving Dallas away from progressive behavior. As someone that's owned 12 duplexes in East Dallas, I have transitioned them from long-term rentals to short-term rentals. I've had less issues with the tenants because I can force them to behave in a certain way, right? So I think what we're having here is we have a few bad hosts and companies that are not behaving appropriately as good neighbors and property owners that are giving the people who are trying to run a small business a bad rep. Being a short-term rental owner, I have recruited my own private security company. I never looked for the city of Dallas. I've had 2 bad incidences, which I squashed within hours. There is a solution, and the solution is not to remove our ability to operate our properties and maintain our neighborhood. I live in East Dallas. I live in historic homes. I have homes on Swiss Avenue. They're very expensive to maintain. Property taxes are going up. The additional revenue helps me offset this and also provide an income for my family. I appreciate your time and all the things that y'all are doing. This is a hard topic. Thank you.
Thank you for being with us today. Nicole Mcclelland, followed by Nancy Rodriguez and Bruce Richardson. Ms. McClelland? We can see you and not hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. If you'd start with your name and address.
Thank you. My name is Nicole Mcclelland. I live at 4840 Worth Street. My husband and I, we are local Airbnb hosts and have been operating our STRs for seven years now. We are responsible hosts that monitor our guests closely. We don't allow parties. We tend to any issues during their stay in a timely manner. We are registered and we pay our hotel taxes monthly. Personally, I am a mother of 3, and this is our bread and butter for our family. I have taken my kids to our Airbnbs, feeling perfectly safe. They have watched me clean and operate our STRs from the very beginning. They have watched me welcome and interact with our guests in all kinds of ways. I can echo what others have said about operating during COVID. We all know that was a hard time, but I believe that there were benefits with our STRs during that season. This is not a passive income for us. Zoning STRs would hurt our family business. As a taxpayer, I do not think that this is the solution. We also partner with a handful of local businesses that benefit from our STRs. Please, I beg you, do not shut us down by zoning STRs. Thank you again for hearing us out. I know this is a hard topic for all of us, and we're all ready for a solution, a good, fair solution for us all. Thank you.
Thank you for being with us. Nancy Rodriguez. So Bruce Richardson, followed by Brenda Gomez, and then Kirsten Gerst. Good morning.
Hi, good morning. I am a responsible host, a super host.
Could you start with your name and address, please?
Yes. Nancy Rodriguez, and my address is 5823 Winding Woods Trail in East Dallas. I am a responsible super host, and I have been for over 5 years. And what I have done for myself and my family is provide affordable housing for responsible guests related to tourism or traveling to Dallas for professional reasons. Some of those reasons that guests have traveled to Dallas include the healthcare workers that we have hosted during COVID. Also, even just to give another list of people, students that are in Dallas for internships, as well as families traveling with their children for medical reasons, medical procedures. And even to add to the state fair employees who are coming in groups of people to Dallas. And with that said, these people are vetted, they're questioned, even once their arrival is here. We are providing outdoor cameras, we're giving them rules and regulations to follow by. And so I do want to just emphasize that although there are some bad apples, the ones that are out there doing good for our community and allowing to give other opportunities to people to travel to Dallas, like I said, whether it's tourism or professional reasons, I would like for us to continue to do that for our community. Thank you.
Thank you for being here. Bruce Richardson, followed by Brenda Gomez, Kirsten Gerst, then Jessica Black.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Bruce Richardson, 5607 Richmond. I led our Zoning Board of Adjustment for 8 years between 2011 and 2019, and I would like to speak with you. 2 years, 3 task forces worth of wrangling. The city has stood still while neighborhoods suffer, until finally the council rejected the industry's regulations-only approach and heeded what the courts have had to say consistently and sent the matter to you with a consensus mandate. Define STRs as lodging uses, place them where we permit lodging today, prohibit them where we don't permit it today, and advance it to the CPC and back to the council so they can ratify it, and then, only then, ratify platform accountability regulations. And these platform, to your question, these platform accountability regulations, they essentially flip the script and give us control over what transactions can be processed by a host, rather than the current situation where we don't know where something is, the host does, and we're kind of powerless to intercede. The courts, a case in Santa Monica established that right in a federal court. You have it. You should take advantage of it. To the idea of 10% of a multifamily structure being designated for STRs, consider how much money we are paying out in the form of our tax revenues to gain 10s and 20s of affordable housing units in apartment complexes, only for this to occur with STRs and just erase those gains. I know you're concerned with housing. I know you're concerned with missing middle strategies.
Mr. Richardson, thank you for being here today.
Can I finish the sentence?
Finish your thought.
But if those missing middle strategies are converted to hotel use, what have we gained? We need housing. Thank you.
Thank you. Brenda Gomez, followed by Kristen Gerst, then Jessica Black. Ms. Gomez, we see you and hear you. If you please start with your name and address.
Absolutely. My name is Brenda Gomez. I have a short-term rental at 2927 Astor Street. I live in the city of Dallas, and I operate my own short-term rental along with my husband. I am a stay-at-home mom. My husband's a teacher at Dallas ISD. And during the course of our hosting, we are super hosts. We have never had a complaint. And we've hosted families that have stayed from a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, people that are coming here for work. These people, families with kids, and they're not here to cause any issues. They just want to stay somewhere. Like our family, when we go, we travel, we want to stay at a house. We don't want to stay at a hotel. And so I just asked of the city council to please look into ways to regulate the bad actors and not prohibit us from using our property that we pay taxes on, hotel taxes, and we also pay property taxes, to tell us what we can or can't do when it is being used for residential uses. People are living in it with their families. And so this whole house shortage and pinning it on short-term use, on short-term rentals, it's a little ridiculous. It's this housing shortage, it's not just because of Airbnb. There are other reasons why there is a housing shortage. But anyhow, so I just ask that you guys please look into ways to regulate the bad actors and not take the rights away from those that are following the rules. Thank you.
Thank you for being here. Yes, Ms. Gerst. And just one observation, we're getting a little bit of background noise here as folks are being moved to the attendee list. If you can please make sure you're muted. Ms. Gerst, thank you.
My name is Kristen Gerst. I live at 2131 Northmore Drive. I own and manage several Airbnbs. I am a host that puts the needs of my neighbors at top priority. They all have my cell phone number, and I comply with any request they ever ask of me, be it bringing in trash cans or even trimming a tree. I not only do not allow parties, I do not allow large numbers of guests, period. In a 5-bedroom house, I will only allow 12 people to ever be there at one time. I do not allow my guests to park on the public street. I only allow a maximum number of cars that can fit in the driveway. I know that I personally pay thousands of dollars in hotel taxes. That is me. I have also seen firsthand that the bad hosts that are out there. I think there need to be some regulations and rules in place, but I think it would be a huge mistake to outlaw STRs completely. Outlawing them would cause thousands of homes to go up for sale. It would crash the property values in the city. In addition, we would lose tourism dollars. There will be many people who decide to travel to other cities where they can rent Airbnbs because that's the type of lodging they're looking for. And that would be instead of coming to Dallas. I think the suggestions such as limiting the number of people per bedroom to keep the house occupancy down is a very good idea. All properties need to be registered. In response to the commissioner's last question before the speaker started, Commissioner, it is easy to get folks registered. Get the platforms to comply and run it. There's only 2 you really need to deal with, Airbnb and VRBO. I can tell you from experience, that's 99.9% of reservations. If you get Airbnb and VRBO to insist on having the registration number prior to letting a listing go live, then all properties would be registered that are actually listed on those 2 sites. That means the host would need to register their property as a short-term rental before ever getting to go to those platforms to advertise them. In addition, insist with Airbnb and VRBO to collect the City of Dallas hotel taxes directly and send it directly to the city.
Ms.
They
Gerst,
do it
that's
for
your
the state
time.
of Texas. They do it for other cities. Why not Dallas? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gerst. Thank you for being with us. Jessica Black, followed by Victor C., then Olive Talley.
Hello, I'm Jessica Black from Arlington, Texas, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Texas Neighborhood Coalition. Multiple Texas cities have wisely used zoning and land use regulations to prohibit STR hotels in all or some of their residentially zoned neighborhoods to protect long-term housing and residents' quality of life. Those cities include Arlington, Corpus Christi, Fort Worth, Galveston, Grapevine, Hearst, New Braunfels, Port Aransas, South Lake, Sugarland, Westland, and West University Place. Brightline zoning provides clarity and certainty to both residents and investors and makes enforcement more manageable for city staff. Other Texas cities that initially allowed STRs in residential zones like Austin, College Station, Fredericksburg, and Waco quickly realized that those STRs were unmanageable and negatively impacting housing and residents' quality of life. They've since amended their STR ordinances to disallow further commercialization of residential neighborhoods. Dallas has the opportunity to learn from the experience of all these cities, both positive and negative. Instead of repeating the mistake of Austin, replicate the success of Arlington. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Ms. Black. Victor C., Olive Talley, followed by William McClelland. Victor C., Mr. King?
He is online.
My name is Victor. I am a Dallas resident, small business owner.
Sir, we are not able to see you. Are you able to turn your camera on?
I thought it was on. Let me try again. Maybe if you can circle back to me in a minute or two here. Let me.
We're glad to do that.
Oh, here we go.
Oh, we see you. Thank you. Please start with your name and address.
Hi, I'm Victor. I'm a resident of Dallas, a small business owner and short-term rental operator. All of our properties
We need your address,
are
please.
7825 Firefall Way. All of our properties are registered. We screen all of our guests and conduct background checks when needed, which, by the way, hotels do not do. We monitor all of our properties with noise sensors and cameras and on-the-ground staff. We have a 24/7 team dedicated to addressing issues in real time. That being said, I believe in fair and effective regulations. I believe in property rights. My first comment is that the 10% density cap being considered for multifamily is too restrictive for commercially zoned areas, such as central area, mixed use, and higher density multifamily zones, MF3, MF4. If STRs are to be considered a hotel or lodging use, then we shouldn't have this burden of a 10% cap placed upon us. If a hotel is allowed to operate 100% of its rooms in a commercially zoned area and 100% of its rooms and units in a building, why should STRs be limited to 10% in these areas? For comparison, even in Texas cities that have regulated STRs, this percentage is higher than 10. It's 12.5 in San Antonio, 25 in Austin, and 100% or no restriction in Arlington, Texas, which, by the way, many commentators have brought up as an example as a city with successful regulations in the commercially zoned area entertainment district, in multifamily zone areas in Arlington, high density multifamily. There is no restriction of any percentage. If we need more affordable housing, build more, like one other commentator said. Convert abandoned old hotels that don't attract guests to affordable housing. Short-term rentals are here to stay, and we should regulate it fairly. Next, I wanted to say, when debating the zoning code, please keep responsible and professional operators in these commercially zoned areas in mind. If you want to be treated like hotels,
That's your
we
time.
should have that same percentage. Thank you.
Thank you for being with us today. Olive Talley, followed by William McClelland and Donna Brine. Ms. Talley?
Yes. Can you hear me?
We can, thank you. If you'll please start with your name and address.
Okay. Olive Talley, 6133 Prospect Avenue in District 14. Many of the STR owners and operators you're hearing from today, both owners of small properties and large, have one thing in common. They all financially benefit from STRs. I can tell you that there has been a shooting at one property in District 2 that was operated by a superhost. There have been raging parties at other properties by some of the people who have spoken today. These small operators, and many of them probably are doing a very good job, but they are the minority of STR operators in Dallas. Less than 15% of the operators and owners in Dallas are these small mom and pops. And as Greg told you earlier, 85% of Dallas STRs are whole home listings and represent 96% of the revenue platform. I have empathy for some of these few private owners, but they have been victims too, because they have been tricked into believing it is okay and legal to run a hotel in the middle of a neighborhood. They have been tricked by Airbnb, VRBO, and these giant platforms. They're like us, are corporate victims of corporate greed of these behemoth platforms. If zoning is adopted, STRs will still be allowed to operate in Dallas. They will just not be allowed in residential neighborhoods. This has always been a land use. It's still a land use. HOAs and condo associations, as some of you have said, can protect themselves through their own regulations, but single-family areas without HOAs have no protections other than the zoning promise that the city gave us when we purchased our homes. We're here today because we are residents who have invested heart and soul and many, many hours into creating safe and stable neighborhoods. We are David, these giant technology platforms, or Goliath, and they have told us basically they are planning to just run.
That's your time, Ms. Talley.
Thousands of dollars on powerful lobbyists. Please protect our neighborhoods. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Talley. William McMillan?
Mr. McMillan is not online.
Donna Byrne? Grady McGann?
I'm here. Can you hear
Yes.
me? Can you see
Yes,
me?
ma'am. We can hear
see
you.
me?
Yes, if you'll start with your name and address.
Okay. My name is Donna Byrne, and I live at 8623 Diceman Drive in Dallas, Texas. I've been an Airbnb host for many years, first from another city and in Dallas since 2018. As I've experienced traveling as a guest over the years and what I'm hearing here today, the big difference that's happened with all of these platforms is that you have so many out of town corporations and owners that are not vested in the city in which their properties are. I'm sure if someone did a study, this is where the problem hosts are coming from, not from local owner-based residential STRs like myself. I live on the property. I rent a private guest suite in the back of my home, and my neighbors benefit from my guest housing. The majority of my guests are coming to visit other family members for illness, for births, for weddings. I have repeat guests, and they are all so grateful that they have a place to come that is within walking distance of their family or within a short drivable distance. They do not want to go to a hotel. I love hosting. I have never had a problem. I'm a super host. I pay my taxes, and I am wholly sympathetic to the issues that are coming up in neighborhoods that are experiencing parties and out of control noise noise. And the solution is in monitoring and eliminating out of town property owners that are not vested in the communities in which they are investing for profit only. So I'm not sure how you do that. I'm not a lawyer, but
Ms. McGann, that's your time.
Thank you.
Thank you for being with us. Grady McGann?
Yes, hello, can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, sir, we can hear you and see you.
Okay, thank you. Hi, I'm Grady McGann. I live at 3218 Urban Avenue in District 5. As an at-large Arts and Culture Advisory Commissioner myself for the City of Dallas, I thank you all for your service. I'm also an Airbnb superhost, and I've hosted thousands of guests at my home. I have almost 2,000 all five-star reviews from guests and no complaints from my neighbors. I pay a lot of attention to who stays at my home. I'm not running a hotel. I'm exposing travelers to a more personal side of Dallas. I support reasonable regulations that would address the issues faced by those on the opposing side. Really, I believe we all want to create a better Dallas. I am registered and in compliance with existing city demands and pay hot on time each month. Again, I believe an improved registration process, enhanced code enforcement, and a mechanism through which registration can be revoked through bad behavior is what is needed. As you previously heard, 0.4% of total residences in the city of Dallas are STRs, according to a study done by the city itself, which indicated that STRs currently have limited measurable impact on neighboring communities and no evidence of citywide impact. Nuisance STRs are outliers, and the stories associated with them for presentation are cherry-picked. Hosting guests in my home makes no negative impact on my neighborhood. In fact, it empowers me into positions of service, including on the commission. STRs exist in all shapes and sizes. We are not a monolith, and we introduce countless visitors to our city in so many positive ways. STRs aren't all illegal event venues, and STR guests aren't all monsters, boogeymen, and criminals. The absolute vast majority are people like you and me. I'm sure that at least some members of ZOAC book STRs when they travel to their cities. Good hosts like me want to work on a coordinated solution and have been participating in good faith in that regard for nearly 2 years. The other side of this issue will not be satisfied unless we are totally destroyed. Every time we propose a solution to a problem raised, their story changes because they're not interested in working with us. That's why this has been debated for years without a solution. They're not being reasonable. Before ZOAC, this becomes an all or nothing solution. But there is established case law in this matter in the state of Texas, and these residential property rights already exist. What seems like a simple solution here has a very good chance of becoming a legal nightmare if enacted. A zoning approach
That's your time,
in this instance.
Mr. McGowan, that's your time. Thank you for being with us. Denise Lowry, followed by Marisol Tim and Linda Young. Good morning.
Good morning. I'm Denise Lowry. I live at 6747 Patrick Drive. I've been in the Hillside neighborhood in East Dallas for 32 years. I've been an active participant in safety and beautification projects in my neighborhood and I would never do anything to put my neighbors' safety at risk or annoy them. Some years ago, I built a beautiful private apartment behind my house for my aging mother. After she passed, I turned it into an STR. It has turned out to be one of the better decisions I've ever made. It has allowed me and my husband the ability to better our economic future, a true blessing on a fixed income. And no unwanted distractions from my neighbors, never a complaint. I've hosted many of my neighbors' families. In fact, my typical guests are older couples coming to visit nearby family. And although I'm not completely ADA compliant, my cottage has features that assist some of our guests with mobility issues. They prefer a quiet environment in a residential area as opposed to a large hotel in a commercial area. I truly believe through my efforts that I've set up a small business that supports my family and have been a good ambassador for the city. My guests learn about the real Dallas and get to experience it from a native's insights. These people spend money here supporting local businesses they wouldn't know about had they stayed in a hotel. My guests make a choice to support small business, and I truly hope our city also decides to support quality small business. I deserve your support. Please take this into consideration when making your recommendations on STRs. Thank you.
Please hold all applause as previously requested. Thank you for being with us, Ms. Lowry. Marisol Tim, Linda Young. Excuse me, please, if I would ask everyone to stay focused on the matter so that we may hear from all of our public comment. Thank you.
I'm number 9. Can I get my number back?
So we're here to hear from our public speakers. We are only here to address this body when you are called. Thank you. We're going to have staff come and address your comments, sir. Ms. Tim, thank you for being with us.
Hi, thank you. Good morning. My name is Marisol Tim. I'm at 814 Elsbeth Street in Oak Cliff. I'm the owner-operator of a short-term rental and a superhost on Airbnb. I pay my hot taxes every month and have since I opened my doors a year ago. I purchased a triplex that's over 100 years old and invested tens of thousands to renovate it from a rundown apartment to a beautiful and comfortable place for visitors to stay when they're in Dallas. This is my livelihood. I employ cleaners, handymen, landscapers, and other businesses in Dallas and often from the Oak Cliff community itself. My short-term rental properties have been an asset to my community. Many of my guests have been members of the community needing temporary housing during a renovation or before a permanent move, or family members trying to stay close to their loved ones during milestone events such as births and deaths. Guests from out of town come to shop at our local boutiques and eat at local restaurants, supporting local small businesses. I believe that responsible regulation is necessary. There are many proposed recommendations that would help residents and short-term rentals coexist. Forcing short-term rentals out of neighborhoods is an overkill approach that is not necessary and will negatively affect local small business owners. This is not a battle against big business fat pocket investors or Airbnb itself. It's a battle against our own neighbors and small businesses that bring tax dollars to their communities. Thank you.
Thank you for being with us, Ms. Tim. Linda Young, followed by Justin Rubel. Good morning.
Hello. My name is Linda Young. I live at 1632 Rio Vista in District 1. And I could make up a bunch of facts and figures like other people have done, because I don't have any actual facts and figures to share except for my own. I started my Airbnb. I'm a 5-star rated superhost. I've got over 300 reviews. I've been doing this since about 2017 because my property, and I started it because my property taxes had gone from, at the time, $6,000 a year to, I believe they'd gone to 15, and now my property taxes are over $23,000 a year. One of the reasons my property taxes have gone up is because I have been one of the people who uses some of the income from my STR to improve my property. My house and garden is one of the prettiest homes on my street. I do not allow parties. I do not have any noise problems. I only allow, if one guest books, I only allow them to have one additional guest while they're staying with me. I have never had a problem with any guest, except for maybe one that dropped crumbs on the floor and didn't pick up after himself. But other than that, I've had zero problems. Most of my neighbors don't even realize I have an STR. I also refer people that are staying in my STR to local businesses so that they're spending money in local businesses and not having to go to an entertainment district to spend money. I know this is a very difficult decision, and there's a lot of animosity amongst some, but I encourage you to very strongly consider.
Ms. Young,
Most
that's
of
your
us
time.
just need the extra money. Thank you.
Thank you for being with us. Justin Rubel, followed by Basil Jackson.
Good morning. My name is Justin Rubel. I'm a resident at 4812 Hollow Ridge Road in East Dallas. I operate a short-term rental property in Elm Thicket, North Park. I've been a superhost for 5 years. When I bought my property, it was abandoned. It was falling down. It was in terrible shape. I put a lot of money into the property, and now I rent it as a short-term rental. I have fantastic results. I host people from local Dallas situations that are going through maybe renovations of their homes. They stay with us a week. I rent to families that have other family members in hospitals that are undergoing treatment. They want to be close. They want to be with their other family members staying in one property, not in 3 hotel rooms. This type of product makes sense. It does not make sense to ban it. Not to mention, who wants to go stay in a commercial district next to a parking lot? That doesn't work, okay? What makes sense here is reasonable regulation. I think every responsible host in this room and on this webcam wants reasonable regulation. Over-regulation is not reasonable, it's unfair, it's anti-Texas, okay? We're individuals here, we pride ourselves on the individual, and we have property rights, and we want to host responsibly. I'm here on behalf of everybody else to tell you that we want that. And so what we need is reasonable regulation, not an outright ban. Thank you.
Thank you for being with us. Basil Jackson, followed by Eugene Gonzalez.
Basil Jackson is not online.
Okay, not present. Eugene Gonzalez, followed by Matthew Bach, followed by Bala Menon.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, but we cannot see you.
See, the camera's on. Let me see.
I'm unable to move him over to a panelist. I don't know why.
And unfortunately, if we can't see you, we're not permitted to take your testimony.
Can you give me just a minute, I guess? to
Sure,
come back to me?
we can come back to you. Is this Mr. Gonzalez?
Yes, it is. This is Eugene.
Okay, we've got a few we'll circle back to.
Thank you.
Matthew Bach? Not present. Is he online, Mr. King?
Mr. Bach is online. He should be turning his camera on.
Yes.
Any moment now.
We can hear you, but we can't. Now we saw you for a second.
I'm sorry. How about now?
We can, thank you. If you'll please start with your name and address. And our next speaker will be Bala Menon, followed by Vitaly Lunev.
Sure. My name is Matt Bach. I reside at 15746 Covewood Circle, 75248. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I'd like to make two requests of ZOAC. First, please uphold the definition of short-term rentals as a lodging use. An STR is a commercial for-profit land use. It's not consistent with our single-family neighborhoods. Second, please uphold existing code which prohibits hotels and lodging uses in residential zoning. Restricting STRs from neighborhoods is consistent with the Dallas Comprehensive Housing Policy, which seeks to promote home ownership. I've been a homeowner in Dallas since 1990. For 30 of those 32 years, I've been active with my homeowners association, Holiday Park. For 15 of those years, I was Holiday Park's president. Additionally, I'm a current board member with the North Dallas Neighborhood Alliance, which serves approximately 30 HOAs in districts 11 and 12, encompassing over 5,000 homeowners. I've experienced firsthand the problems transient renters and off-site landlords pose to neighborhoods. I've seen the misery that even just one neglected house due to uncaring tenants and a landlord can cause for an entire block of residents. Residents who simply want to be good neighbors and live in a quiet, peaceful setting. This isn't a case of trying to balance two competing legitimate interests. STRs are owned primarily by investors who simply want to make money. They have no long-term stake in our neighborhoods or city. Healthy, strong, and stable neighborhoods are the lifeblood of Dallas. If our neighborhoods decline, so too will the city of Dallas. Thank you.
Thank you for being with us. Bala Menon.
I am in contact with Bala, trying to get him on now. If you give me one moment, I'm just not able to make him a panelist. I'm sorry.
And we see, is this Vitaly Lunev?
Yes.
And we see you and hear you. If you'll please start with your name and address.
Vitaly Lunev, 623 Haynes Ave. Prohibition doesn't work, and that is what is being proposed here today. It didn't work for alcohol, not really working for drug use, and will not work for Dallas STRs. As an example, look at Fort Worth, which was one of the first to prohibit in the nation, and still has close to 1,000 SDRs. And are looking to reverse the laws now. Bad apples should be eliminated. Anyone who hasn't been registered with hotel occupancy tax should be prohibited. If you want to impact affordable housing, as so many folks talk about, let's eliminate single-family zoning, and NIMBY is impacting low-income housing tax credit communities. STRs are for-profit businesses, so are the long-term rentals, whose residents are vetted by the landlord, not the neighborhood. So it's really not that different. Finally, we already have laws on the books that impact long-term, that impact gatherings, crime, music. We should just enforce it, and not just for STRs, but for everyone. And finally, why do we have residents of Arlington, many of whom are consultants for hotel industry, tell us what to do? We didn't tell Arlington how much money to give out to the billionaire franchise owners, so let us deal with the Dallas problems and let them deal with theirs. Thank you.
Thank you for being with us. Mr. King, were you able to get Mr. Bala Menon moved over?
Unfortunately, I was not.
Okay, we'll circle back on that. Our next speakers are Kim Joppi, Carol Barnett, Sandra Figueroa.
Miss Joppi is not online.
Carol Barnett?
Not online.
Okay, not present. Ms. Figueroa? We can see you, but we can't hear you. And our next,
hear me now?
We can. And if you'll give me one moment, our next speakers will be Rob Thomas, Carol Considine, and Steve Kiefer. Ms. Figueroa, thank you. If you'll start with your name and address.
Sandra Figueroa. I'm on the 6200 block of Palo Pinto. I am a Dallas native, and I reside in Host and District 14. I've been a responsible superhost of several properties for 8 years, all in the Dallas region. I have paid thousands in taxes to the city of Dallas. And I strongly support many local businesses and professions. My goal as a host is to show the best of Dallas. And as a proud Texan, I take hospitality and safety seriously. I vet all my guests properly. I've had 0 complaints and issues with any of my neighbors. My properties are always the most unique and well kept on the street. I have a home built in the 20s that boasts a 200-year-old pecan tree in the back, and I vow to keep the character of this home, even though it's surrounded on each side by new townhome builds. My guests consist of people relocating here, professionals here for work, a lot of locals, mostly grandparents wanting to visit their families and new additions and be within walking distance. I have traveling nurses, just to name a few of the many faces who are my guests. I have an ongoing relationship with emergency vet services for their interns. They have a place within walking distance that's safe. They have the comforts of their own home. It's less expensive than living in a motel for 3 weeks. I believe in regulations. More importantly, we need a practical, effective way to enforce this. Enforcement is key. We have hundreds of cities that have been successfully able to symbiotically exist with STRs, and these all address the concerns of the anti-STR voice. Meanwhile, filling the City of Dallas coffers so that we can fund other projects and improve and beautify the city. I regretfully voted for my District 14 councilman. A zoning ordinance is not the correct response or the option for this discussion. Hosting has been a wonderful experience for me. I would not have been able to take care of my aging 80-year-old parents without the flexibility and income that hosting provides for me. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you for being here. Rob Thomas?
Hi, thank you so much for the opportunity to speak. My name is Rob Thomas. I live at 1439 Sereno. I've done a good job of listening, and I acknowledge each and every one of you and your experiences on both sides of the fence here. And now I want all of you to put yourself in my shoes. For 2 years, I lived right next door to the party house located at 8334 Banquo Drive in Claremont. And it's Sleep 17. And if you go look for yourself, take none of my word for this. I want all of you to observe these directly for yourself. It's advertised to attract parties. It sleeps 17. I walked through the house with the owner before he launched it. Everywhere you turned was a bed. This was a party house. I had a toddler, and night after night, weekend after weekend, me and my family were subject and vulnerable to unvetted, undocumented, unmonitored strangers where, parties, marijuana over the fence, complete disrespect, and so for 2 years, my peace was disrupted, and the owner, I won't name names out of respect for the individual that requested that earlier, is rewarded $900 a night. I had zero recourse. You can go look at every one of the 311s that I put in, the 911s, and it's just very frustrating. So I don't live next to one now. That experience is over. Inconveniently, I had to move. Otherwise, I was going to have a heart attack or do something that I would have regretted. But now as a homeowner, one of these could pop up right next door to me, and that's not okay. Therefore, I'm asking you to put yourself in my shoes as you think of this and support the Keep It Simple solution, which has been put forth by the City Council. And I've emailed each and every one of you with the bullet points. I want to be respectful of everyone else's time. And again, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak.
Thank you for being with us. Mr. King, it appears you were able to get someone moved over.
Okay, Ashley should be available to turn your camera on.
Is this Baileyman on? Sir, we can see you, but I'm not sure which one of our speakers you are in our order.
That's Carlos Pedrojita. He's coming up in a little bit.
You are. I'm glad to look ahead. So I'll go back to our list. Number 60, Carol Considine. And she is in person. Our next speakers will be Steve Kiefer and Chris Heatherdale.
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. My name is Carol Considine. I live at 7230 Westlake Avenue, District 9. After drug dealing spilled out into the neighborhood and drunken parties at an STR duplex in Lakewood across the street, one father won't let his children play in the front yard. This STR is 11 houses away from Lakewood Elementary School. I'm going to repeat that, 11 houses away from an elementary school. Who and what are STRs bringing in? We don't know, and neither do the platforms. STRs threaten families. There have been 248 verified shootings at STRs and 6 in Dallas. STRs are hotels, and the worst offenders become event centers or even crime scenes. Reports have increased of loud multi-day weekend parties, weddings with caterers, vendors, tents, music, alcohol, buses, valet parking. Operations like these belong in commercial zone neighborhoods. They should not become nightmares for once peaceful neighborhoods. Please preserve the quality of life in neighborhoods and support the council's consensus on the Keep It Simple solution and enact a simple zoning solution that gets these commercial uses out of our residential neighborhoods. Not every inch of Dallas needs to be commercialized. Thank you.
Thank you for being with us. Steve Kiefer, Chris Heatherdale, followed by Ed Zahara.
Hi, am I still allowed to speak?
I think you're just a little bit further down our list, sir, but we will get to you.
Come on, thank you.
No, thank you.
Mr. Kiefer is not online.
Chris Heatherdale? Yeah. So we can hear you and not see you.
Chris Heatherdale was here. Can't see anymore.
All right, we will circle back. Ed Zahara?
Ed is unable to join us, but he's listening.
All right, not speak. Emil Lippe?
They're online.
And we do not see them.
I've got this on.
And we're not able to see you. We can hear you.
I think it's on.
We can hear you but not see you.
Here we are.
Yes, we can see you now. If you'll start with your name and address.
Emil Lippe, 6828 Gaston Avenue. First of all, with respect to the threat of litigation, I'm a litigation attorney, and I welcome the opportunity to respond in court to someone who claims that they have a vested property right to operate a business in a residential zoned area that prohibits business and commercial use. The main point I would want to make that I don't think has been focused on much at all is security. Security for the residents. You've heard very few people speak up who are neighbors of STRs. Instead, it's the super hosts that are making tens of thousands of dollars in profit that are saying, protect my quote unquote rights. The Crime Watch program has been very effective, and the police department is very supportive of neighborhood Crime Watch programs. You cannot have a Crime Watch program with an STR next door. It makes it completely impossible. Yes, I've lived next door to one. I don't like it. It's been a source of parties, wedding receptions, bridegroom and parties and all sorts of things like that, unloading of a bus full of college students. We need to ban short-term rentals in residential neighborhoods and then allow them to be in the areas where the zoning will permit. Thank you very much.
Thank you for being with us. We have Patrick Block, Ashley Martson, Barbara Batson, and then Carlos Paderta. So stand by, 4 more. Mr. Block?
Can you see me?
We can hear you and not see you.
My camera is on. Is there something I need to do?
Okay, you should be a video button in the app.
I see a mic button, but I do not see a video button.
Okay, we will come back to you and see if Mr. King's able to assist. Ashley Martson? Ms. Martson?
Hi, good morning, Council. My name is Ashley Martson. I own and reside at 5103 Pershing Street, down the street from the Old Monk. If ever there were a person with a balanced perspective on this issue, it would be me. I live within 300 feet of 4 Airbnbs. We are very fortunate to have never had an issue. We still have plenty of long-term neighbors that we maintain great relationships with, and you bet we watch out for each other. I also host families in a home that I own, one street over, hundreds of only 5-star ratings, registered, paying taxes. My neighbors are lucky, but I recognize that there are those that are not. I'm also a 14-year real estate lawyer. I appreciate property rights versus city and community interests. So in short, I get it. I want to help the city and my fellow residents find the right balanced solution to the known issues caused by STRs. But redefining the zoning code is not the only solution. And in fact, it's not even close to the best solution. The best solution is still smart regulations with limits on density and direct collection of the hotel taxes from Airbnb that will fund adequate city resources to shut down those who are abusing the privilege of hosting. Proposed modifications on the zoning code, which have the effect of either eliminating or concentrating the Airbnbs to certain areas, all it's going to do is cause good hosts to exit the industry, and those who think they can operate under the radar are still going to operate. You do not have the benefit of the revenue and the manpower from hotel taxes. If you limit it to certain areas, I guarantee you those large absentee investors with quick access to cash, they're going to swoop in and they are going to grab everything that is now zoned accordingly. And you're going to drive out long-term residents in the process. I recognize that even though the precedent on the lawsuits will probably find in favor of the city, you're still going to spend tens of thousands of dollars fighting those lawsuits. And I don't want you to see you do that.
That's your time.
Thank you.
Thank you for being with us. Barbara Batson? Ms. Batson's in person.
Yes, my name, excuse me, my name is Barbara Batson. I live at 5030 Thunder Road, Dallas District 13, and I've been a resident in the Dallas area for over 50 years. We are victims of an STR. The weekend of October 2020, an Airbnb first opened. We were invaded with over 100 people coming and going. We live in a cul-de-sac, which is a very congested area. There's 6 duplexes, giving us 12 families that live there already. And the parking, there's only 4 of us that have driveways. The rest of the people that live there are limited to parking on the curb. Well, when an STR comes in, there was 25 cars parked in the cul-de-sac, and each car had 4 and 5 people, making it over 100 people coming and going. Well, of course, we called the police many times, code enforcement, and it was all very limited help. And after that happened, I had a theft of landscape plants, close to $3,000 loss. And that's just the beginning of the nightmare that we've been experiencing since 2020. Thunder Road is the 4900 block and 5100 block is narrower by 4 foot than a standard street. And the 5100 block was designated to have signs. There's no parking after 6:30 until 6:30 a.m. the next morning, because the street is so congested and because no emergency vehicles can get in and out. With STRs, we have one. They've opened a second one as this week, And I'm hearing that there's a third one that's proposing to be open in a very short time. So we are in a very awkward situation.
That's your time, ma'am. Thank you for being with us today. Carlos Pedrita. And my apologies for not getting your name correct.
It's fine. Hi, so my name is Carlos Piedrahita. I am a resident at 2818 Warren Avenue, 75215. And I just want to reiterate that I have an Airbnb and I'm actually a neighbor here in the Wheatley Place. It's the Forgotten Historic District here in Dallas, here in the South Dallas Fair Park area. And I wanted to just kind of reiterate some of the facts that were spoken. The first one being that these calls of nuisance, right, and these arguments that are made sound more like emotion-based arguments that really have no true stats behind them, just like how our first panelist or speaker spoke about. Just for an example, we've had over 300 stays with the 4 listings that we have in the surrounding neighborhood since the beginning of this year, and there has been not one 911 call or 311 call on our properties here in the South Dallas area, right? Secondly, our properties have really improved and really contributed economic dollars and exported dollars from other cities into our local South Dallas area that has not received that growth and dollar contribution from the surrounding government county area. Right? So I feel that it's been something that's been extremely beneficial to the community, and I've employed individuals that are right. Now going over the housing crisis, there was a stat that was published by the Dallas analytics team, and like they said, it's 0.4% of homes that are attributed to as being STRs. So I think when we talk about housing affordability, right, I think that there needs to be more of an surely this should be looked at a supply and demand right aspect. And lastly, when it comes to housing has actually become more how can I say, it's actually become more affordable in the sense that I host many families that are, for example, on a 2-week hiatus waiting for their vouchers to be approved, right? And I've given them a solution to have a 2-week housing period or a 1 month housing period.
That's your time,
where they don't
sir.
have to pay for an application fee. All right, well, thank you for talking. And I just want to reiterate that I have many Dallas families that actually stay in my place.
Thank you for being with us. I think I see Mr. Zahara. Yep. All right, we'll continue down our list. Yep, Anon.
Just real quick, Patrick Block was able to get on camera, and
Okay.
Ed Zara is also on camera now.
Okay. So, Ed Zahara, we're ready to hear from you. If you'd begin with your name and address.
What was it?
We can see you, but we can't hear you.
You're speaking to Ed Zara?
We can hear you now.
Thank you. Ed Zara, 1003 Valencia, Dallas, Texas. Support KISS. Keep it simple solution. Council consensus option. Our zoning ordinances ensure managed predictable growth by creating defined land use. The single-family land use has restrictions that all owners agree to follow, but some think the rules don't apply to them and are converting long-term rentals into illegal mini hotels. 1, conform the development code with the local government code that defines SDRs as a lodging use. 2, prohibit hotel and lodging uses in single-family zone districts. 3, keeping STRs out of residential zones is consistent with Dallas comprehensive housing policy. 4, you have the authority to regulate where STR mini hotels may legally operate like the hotels they imitate. 5, clear zoning prevents conflicts with incompatible land uses. 6, clear zoning benefits all stakeholders, including SDR owners, code compliance, DPD, and over 500,000 homeowners. 7, clear zoning preserves our neighborhoods quality of life. Dallas needs more housing, not lodging. Thank you.
Thank you for being with us. Patrick Block.
Hi, my name is Patrick Block. I live at 5806 Victor Street in District 14 in Genius Heights in East Dallas. I live in the house that my mother bought in 1976. I grew up here. I went to school here. I know my neighbors. When my mother's dementia advanced to the point where she needed to move to Juliet Fowler Assisted Living down the street, renting out my old room as a guest room on Airbnb helped pay for my mother's significant medical expenses while allowing me to stay close and for family to be able to come and visit. If it weren't for putting the extra room on Airbnb, I probably would have had to sell my 100-year-old house that I grew up in, worry about it being torn down, and move somewhere with a lower cost of living. Before I started renting out the guest room, I discussed it with my neighbors on both sides of the house, and they were okay with it. I greet every visitor who comes to my house. Most of my visitors are 1 or 2 people who stay for a day or two. They're always nice people who take good care of the place and are respectful of the neighborhood. I pay my hotel taxes. I don't have issues with the visitors or my neighbors, but I feel a little beat up when I hear things like I have to inform all of my neighbors within 1,000 feet or zoning changes that eliminate my ability to host visitors in the home that I live in. When I hear keep it simple, I hear a blanket ban. I do not hear nuance or exceptions for owner-occupied homes. In considering changes, please keep on-premise hosts who pay their taxes and do not contribute to neighborhood problems in mind. Thank you.
Thank you for being with us. Iep Anan, followed by Matt Martin and Jerry Locke.
Mr. Anan is not online. Can I ask just real quick off the record question of Mr. Zara? How were you able to jump over and change your viewing so I could make you a panelist? There's other attendees that would love to know this.
Mr. Zara, technical question for you. You were able to assist Mr. King with moving. Do you know how you were able to do that? We have other speakers who were not able to move to attendee, if you happen to know. Did you do anything on your side? Mr. King, you might chat with him. We can follow up on that to see if we can assist with our other speakers.
Okay.
Is Matt Martin online? Not in person.
Are you speaking to Ed Zara?
We can see you. We were trying to ask if you, a technical question, we're trying to move some other speakers over if you had done anything on your side that would help us with our other speakers.
I can't understand what you're asking me.
Thank you.
What were the steps that you took, sir, to get into the attendee list? You either logged on a mobile device or on your computer or something?
On my computer.
Okay. All right, I'll keep working on it. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. King. Is Matt Martin online or Jerry Locke? Oh, Jerry Locke is in person. So we have Matt Martin and then Nancy Griffin. Ms. Locke?
Hi, I'm Jerry Locke, and I live at 618 North Montclair Avenue in Dallas. I want to make sure that you have the face of a responsible owner. I live in the house next door to the house that I grew up in. I work at the hospital that I was born at. I have such great pride and love for my community. I would never do anything that would damage it in any way. I would never do anything to damage my own home, and my short-term rental is in my home. I developed it for my parents as they aged so that they would have a safe place to be and I could take care of them, along with being a single mother of 2. Thankfully, they did not need it the way that I expected, and so I have converted it into an Airbnb. My neighbors do know that it's here because they make use of it all the time whenever their family comes to visit, and they can simply walk across the street instead of going to a hotel. I'm not a hotel. I don't charge anybody a resort fee. I don't charge anybody a parking fee. They walk less than 100 feet to get into the facility. They can make a biscuit for breakfast in the morning. They can make their own cup of coffee. It's a completely different thing than a hotel. I've had guests that have been wonderful. They love staying. During the pandemic, I hosted traveling nurses who took care of our many sick in our hospitals. A single mom, and people are talking about how much money you make. Well, there's never enough. I don't know. I'm not any you can say I'm not high end, but it did help pay for my two daughters' graduation from college, and it's also put a new roof on my house, and it's also replaced the plumbing in a 23-year-old home that I could not afford to have done on my own salary. There are many things that I want you to know about all of the things that I love my neighborhood, and again, I would never do anything to hurt it. So this has been a godsend for me, and I appreciate that you will take into account there are a lot of people just like me that are making sure that things are right. Thank you.
Thank you for being with us. Matt Martin, Nancy Griffin, followed by Derek Richardson.
Mr. Martin and Ms. Griffin are not online.
Derek Richardson and Mike Northrup.
Good morning. Can you see me?
We can hear you, and yes, now we can see you.
Okay, great. Thank you for allowing me this time. I just wanted to, a lot of great things have been said for people who've been
If you could please,
negatively.
sir, if you could please start with your name and address. Thank you.
Sorry. My name is Derek Richardson, and I currently reside at 4545 Mission Avenue in Frisco. And I operate STRs in the city of Dallas. And a lot of great things have been said, but I think this fundamentally comes down to a question of having.
That's why I went. That's why I said in terms of.
We're getting some feedback here in the chamber.
Sorry.
No, if you can just stand by for one moment, Mr. Richardson,
Yeah.
I want to make sure we can hear your comments. All right, it's gone. Let's try again, Mr. My apologies.
Great, thank you. So I think the fundamental question, right, there are two. One is how do we have the members of the community who benefit from having STRs available, right, those families that want to stay in residences like this, like, get the benefit of that? How do we have the city of Dallas benefit from getting additional revenue so that we can properly manage these resources? And then most importantly, it sounds like, how do we have the people who are in our communities not be negatively impacted by these occurrences? And I don't know that zoning is the right tool for this particular job. There's already zoning on the books, and absolutely any responsible operator wants to honor that and register and honor all the currently applicable laws and regulations. But I think it really comes down to, if we want to regulate the behavior that happens in these units, right, in these homes, that is a function of trying to regulate behavior, which is what we're actually talking about. And does this particular code solve that problem, or does it, quote, throw the baby out with the bathwater? Right? Before I sold my home, because I was priced out of the Dallas market in Salina, turned my home, my 4-bedroom home, into an STR, and was able to host a family whose home had burned down.
Mr. Richardson, that is your time. Thank you
you
for being with us today.
Thank
Mike
you.
Northrup, followed by Erica McKim, followed by Monica Grigio.
Mike Northrup is not online.
Okay. I believe Ms. McKim is in person, and so that will be followed by Monica Grigio and Diana Huffstedler.
Hi, I'm Erica McKim. I own 8416 Cadenza Lane, and I own a single-family home, and I do Airbnb out of it. I rent 1 to 3 rooms depending on what my schedule is and what I'm doing. I've been doing this for years. I served 10 years in the U.S. military, and I did Airbnb all over the world, and I learned from these hosts how I learned about their countries, learned about their places. And I knew when I was medically retired and I couldn't hold a full-time job, and I had to nurse myself back to health, it was a way to help pay for a mortgage that I wasn't able to pay for. Not only that, I got to host people from China. Right now I have somebody from China. I had somebody from India. I have all over, and they're learning about Texas. They're learning about Dallas. I'm helping them through the community. I'm helping them. Some of them are finding homes. I have people all the time that during the snow apocalypse, when we had, everything was bad, my house had heat, my house had water. I had nurses and doctors staying at my house, and so thankful that I was hosting them. My neighbors all know that I host. I have cameras around. One of my neighbors' houses had a package stolen. My cameras, they came to me because they knew I had it. They looked at the cameras. But the regulations are needed. There is a house behind me that the people, it's an LLC owned from Georgia, and they're not there. The people have broken in. I have homeless that have tried to get in there. I've had to use my cameras to show the police because they're not coming. So there are responsible people and there are not responsible people, and I am one of those responsible people. And I'm making, all the neighborhood businesses get business because I'm telling them, hey, go to this place, go to that place. I also have been able to nurse myself back to health, own a business, and now I am able to afford 4 part-time employees that help that business because I'm able to host and I don't have to know for sure that, I know my mortgage is covered, so I don't have to worry about that. So you're getting more taxes just because I'm able to have the free time to run another business because of because I'm allowed to host in my house. I make a safe place.
That's your time, Ms. McKinn, if you just finish your thought. Thank you. Thank you for being with us. Monica Grigio, followed by Diana Huffstedler.
Monica is not online, and Diana is not online.
Brina Smith. Ivory Ben. Ms. Smith?
Brenna is online.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can see and hear you. If you'd please begin with your name and address.
Yes, my name is Brenna Smith, and I'm at 8808 Angora Street in Dallas. And I'm in support of the short-term rentals. My husband and I both are traveling salespeople. And you know what that means, countless hotels, road warriors, being away from home, and all those things. And we found this wonderful loophole, the short-term rental. So what it has allowed us to do is take on a new territory. You know, with the economy down, we've needed a little extra income. And so we were able to do an Airbnb, and we can rent out our Dallas home when we are not there. This has allowed us to be able to travel as a family versus one parent being gone and the other one home, as we've been able to provide consistency for our kid. We can't sell our Dallas home because we still have to be in Dallas 4 to 5 months total out of the year. We bring business to our local restaurants and shops. We tout and advertise everyone. You can see in all of our reviews, people talking about, oh, they love this XYZ coffee shop. Our neighbors actually help out with the short-term rental. We've had, boxes delivered to our house or whatever, and things going back and forth. Security issues at someone else's house, which was just their own residential issue, and we caught it on camera from our house. We have a wonderful host that helps us, a co-host who responds within 2 minutes of almost every single text and message that they get. We're registered with the Muni Revs. We pay our HOT monthly. We're in compliance. So I want to know why we want to punish the few, or punish the many for the faults of the few. Our house is 700 square feet. It's a 2-bedroom, 1 bath. It's full of toys. All the reviews talk about how kid-friendly it is. People that stay there are a husband and a wife coming to town for an anniversary, or people traveling to come see their family on a trip. So please help me keep my traveling sales family together. We support reasonable regulations and ask that you reject the notion of zoning, as it's not appropriate to effectively regulate short-term rentals.
That's your time.
We need to allow for a registration-focused ordinance that penalizes and closes the bad guys. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for being with us. Ivory Ben. Shelby Fletcher's next, followed by Ronald Knurr. Yes, ma'am.
May I begin?
Yes, if you can please start with your name and address.
Thank you. My name is Shelby Fletcher. I live at 6463 Trammell Drive. I sympathize with anybody who's come here today telling a legitimate story about a problem they've had with an STR. I do know, however, that problems with neighbors are not exclusive to STRs and happen with all kinds of neighbors. The solution to any issues presented here is not a zoning ordinance, and the City of Dallas report from May 2021 supports this. That report found that the impact of STRs on our city is, and I quote, minuscule, and none of the 3 separate task forces convened by the City Council since 2020 to thoughtfully consider short-term rentals in our city, one of which I have served on, has recommended such an overreaching reaction as a zoning ordinance. The recommendations the task forces have made are registration processes each time. And bear in mind that these task forces have been more than fair to the anti-STR folks and have included non-Dallas resident attorneys who head anti-STR special interest groups and who support bans on STRs. There is a way forward, and zoning is an overly complicated, overly reactive overcorrection. I have noticed some false statements presented today, as well as omissions of important information. Firstly, short-term rentals are a residential use of property, and that has been decided by the Texas courts. Also, the city has talked about voluntary collection agreements with short-term rental platforms so that city HOT will be remitted automatically. Further, more than 300 short-term rentals are registered in the city, and there are fewer than 6,000 STRs in the city. In fact, the city estimates that there are about 2,600 STRs in the city. Please know that cherry-picked data collected by unknown methods and analyzed by anti-STR advocates has been presented to the city in contradiction to the city's own report and used to mislead decision makers. Finally, naysayers are telling you that cities across Texas have taken a restrictive approach to STRs, and that's not the case. I'd encourage this body to do their own research, look at the city manager's report on this issue from last year, as opposed to getting false information from naysayers. STRs account for less than 0.5% of the housing stock in Dallas, and the state of our permitting system and our inability to build more housing stock is the cause of any housing issues, not STRs.
That's your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for being with us today. Is Ivory Ben online or present?
Ivory Ben is not online.
Okay, and not present. Ronald Knurr? And I apologize if I've gotten your name wrong.
Good morning. My name is Ron Kinnair, 7062 Oak Bluff Drive in Dallas. I'd like to start off by saying that the purpose of short-term lodging is lodging, not parties or events. Neighbors are very concerned about parties and events at neighborhood houses. So are responsible owners. So is Airbnb. Owners who share their homes for lodging for others are entrepreneurs in hospitality. Hospitality is promoted in the Bible, Hebrews 13:2 and others. Short-term hospitality is promoted by the federal government in the IRS code by providing an exemption for up to 14 days rent of your own home to others each year. Hospitality is a good and a constructive social value. A measured approach would allow Dallas property owners to do short-term rentals from their homesteads and would disallow parties or events at any residential non-homesteaded rental properties without a waiver from the city. Again, I want to stress that the purpose of short-term lodging is lodging, not parties or events. There are places for that. Let's work together to provide hospitality to visitors and newcomers to our city. Thank you.
Thank you for being with us. Scott Lamberti, followed by Josh Espigio.
Scott Lamberti is not online.
Okay, not online and not present.
Josh is not online.
And not present. Rosa Hernandez.
Not online.
And not present. Rob Stokes.
Not online.
Not present. Michael Brown.
Not online.
And Marquez Branson.
Not online.
Okay, not online and not present. So we do have one speaker, well, we had a few who we were not able to get moved over. Mr. King, are they still online? Are we able to solve that? We had Kyla Powell.
No, they've dropped off, unfortunately.
Okay, well, for anyone who may be listening in, we would welcome having your feedback through letters or other means if you're able to follow up with us. We do have one speaker who is present who was not here initially, Mr. Danny Augustus. You told me your number. And so you have 2 minutes.
Hi, thank you for
Yes, I know, I will acknowledge him now.
allowing me to speak, and apologize about the outburst.
Name
but-
and address first,
Oh,
please.
Actually, I don't have a home. I go from my Airbnb to Airbnb, and I live in each Airbnb, and so I can be a.
We need a name and address for the record, please.
Okay, 6437 Trammell, 6437 Lantos, that's one. And so the reason why I do that is because all of the increased taxes here in Dallas doesn't allow me to have a home here. So what I tell you guys today is if you vote against short-term rentals, so-called short-term rentals, most of them are 2 weeks and above. A lot of these other incidences are anecdotal, and they don't really speak to most of us responsible owners. I'll say that short-term rentals allows for businesses to be supplemented, and especially post-COVID times. I kind of lost track. Anyways, just think of short-term rentals as kind of bringing in your mother-in-law and charging her. I'm sure a lot of you would like to do that. That was a joke. Most of the short-term rentals are 80% long-term, like two weeks. These are anecdotal. I empathize with these people. But y'all's duty today is to protect the majority of people. And if you vote against short-term rentals, what's going to happen is you're going to displace a lot of people. That already has happened with gentrification on some of these lower economic neighborhoods. Our major problem here in Dallas is we don't support officers here. That's the major problem. We already have laws against people that are having parties. We have laws against that. So we're throwing things out. We're throwing the baby out with the bathwater. We already have established laws that we don't even follow. You guys don't even give the cops authority to follow those laws, and the criminals are being thrown out, and now the short-term rentals are the ones to.
Sir, thank you for being with us. That's your time.
Have a nice day.
So I believe we have one other speaker. Is there anyone else here who was not called and wishes to address the group?
Michael Brown is available.
Okay, we have one speaker in person. We'll do that, and then that will be our speakers for today. Yes, sir, please start with your name and address.
Hi, good morning. My name is Blake Arant. I live at 8718 Autumn Oaks Drive. I've lived in Dallas for 25 years. If you ban STRs in residential neighborhoods, then you are effectively shutting down STRs in Dallas, and therefore destroying the livelihood and supplemental income of your own citizens, and extra revenue for the city, right? City Council has heard directly from my neighbors who are doctors and lawyers. They support my STRs. I have vacation homes, not party houses. All of us do. The people who are doing parties need to be thrown out. Okay, I feel for the people who are next to those. I have 7 STRs here in Dallas. I paid over $44,000 in the last 12 months in hot tax. $44,000 in hot. That has to be enough to hire somebody to help these people who are having a problem. My tax bill this year is over $140,000 to the county. We're up to $200,000 almost. Can we not do something to help some people who are living next to the bad actors? So what do? The answer is sensible, reasonable regulation. Penalize host and guest if you can. I don't know if you can. Penalize host and guest who are in violation. Whatever those violations are, you determine. Also, here's the key. You need to penalize neighbors of STRs who call in erroneous complaints. This is happening time and time again. You do have some Karens that live next to SDRs, okay? They complain about everything. You heard from one of mine.
That's your time, sir.
Can I finish my sentence and I'm done? You heard from one that complained about smoke blowing over the fence. That's just an example. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Thank you very much.
Thank you for being here. Mr. King, did you say that we had one other speaker who was still online?
Yes, Michael Brown is online.
Mr.
Yes,
Brown?
I'm still here.
We'll need to see you. There you are. Thank you. You have 2 minutes. Please start with your name and address.
This is Mike Brown. I live at 5383 Southern Boulevard. I believe that the zoning is an appropriate solution as it's been presented, and should not be supported by the cities, and it really hasn't been supported by the city's own studies, which finds that the impacts of STRs are somewhat minuscule. We definitely sympathize with some of the things and concerns that have been raised already in terms of legitimate complaints. And typically those bad actors and operators are those that do not have a local presence, which has already been shared, do not have a robust screening and vetting process for their guests, as well as resources to address these issues as they do arise. Additionally, we do, however, see that there are a small number of people that are kind of retelling the same stories, appearing to somewhat manipulate the system. We do agree that more due diligence is needed and investigation into some of the specific areas of the city where these complaints are being made to substantiate the order of magnitude that is really needed for regulations. We also agree that the home should not be used for venues and events for obvious reasons, as it does open up operators and neighborhoods to some of the issues that have been shared in terms of parking, noise violations, et cetera, et cetera. Please keep in mind that some of these issues also have been raised can and probably do happen with long-term renters and homeowners as well. Some of the sentiments shared we agree with in terms of being able to find a justified solution for that, to have a balanced approach. We've hosted many short-term and mid-term renters over the past 4 years. And as an operator, we feel like we are in the process of being able to have a vetting process that allows us to be able to catch this. Due to some of the concerns, limited resources, obviously, from the city with the police force and things of that nature, we actually have our own private security on retainer. We've only had to use them once, and that was 3 years ago.
Mr. Brown, that's your time.
And I also hear a lot about Airbnb.
Mr. Brown?
I haven't talked about other platforms.
Mr. Brown, that's your time. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you.
So that concludes our public speakers. I have made some notes. I'm going to try to summarize, and if my members will tell me if I've missed any items. So the items requested for staff are to add the Murray Cox data to the website, to add the council briefings and quality of life recommendations to the code amendment website, to bring back to the body additional provisions that may be appropriate within zoning regarding noise, light, security, similar to those we would include in a special use permit, to evaluate multifamily provisions that may be appropriate based on other code or other districts within our code, to bring back platform requirements that may be appropriate to include within zoning. Any other items?
Was the first, Madam Chair, the first item that you mentioned, is that the white paper prepared by the assistant manager?
Essentially, just
and I did look
have
it up
that
afterwards. It's from 2021, so it's not that old.
From 2000, so the quality of life recommendations from 2021 are the ones?
No, I'm referring to the white paper prepared by the assistant city manager.
Yes, and I believe that was in our docket. Yes, we'll include that as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McGregor. So with that, is there a motion to direct staff to bring that back to us at our July 7th hearing? So we have a motion from Commissioner Blair, seconded by Mr. McGregor. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Thank you all. And sorry, I have to write and type and speak at the same time. Not a good skill set for me. So this will be back before us on July the 7th, which is our next meeting. That concludes our business agenda. Other matters, we have the approval of the minutes from June the 2nd. Were there any corrections? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. McGregor. Is there a second? Thank you, Mr. Hall. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Minutes are approved. I would like to thank staff members, our commissioners who joined us today, all the members of the public for being with us, staying with us through the morning and sharing all of your input. We will be digesting that as we continue to deliberate on this item. We have no other business before us. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. McGregor. Commissioner Blair for your second. It is 11:33 a.m. and we are adjourned. Thank you all.